in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed at the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its two front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, cripes, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is much bigger.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It is, of course, the home of common sense. It's the one place to come when you get the news. The whole truth is told here. We don't give you a spin. We don't give you anything other than what is actually going on. We also want to hear from you, and we want to get your views on everything that is happening. Before we tell you what the news is, have a listen to this.
Morning, Mike. James from Blackburn.
Morning, Mike. Great show. I'm going to put me down for one of them bumper stickers.
Morning, Mike. Pete from Lincolnshire.
Morning, Mike. It's Kate from Leeds.
Good morning, Mike. I've just applied for my bumper sticker.
I love your show every morning.
Great show.
Great show.
Great show as always, buddy.
Keep up the great work, everyone.
We're going to keep up the great work here. You keep up the great work there. The only people who aren't keeping up the great work, of course, is this government under Keir Starmer, who's being assailed from all sides even more now than he was before I went away. I only went away for 5 days. I came back. Suddenly, everybody's got it in for him. It turns out that Rachel Reeves is now facing a bigger black hole than she claimed that she inherited from the Tories. Thanks to who? Thanks to Rachel Reeves. Yeah, that's right. She's created a £35 billion black hole, and we don't quite know how she's going to fill it. Also, Keir Starmer is out and about today trying to prop up some of the policies that he has been bringing in over the past 9 to 10 months. This morning, we're going to be bringing you exclusive pictures that have been taken of a protest going on in his own constituency against the vote to bring down disability benefits and to stop people from getting their PIP allowances. Rachel Reeves, meanwhile, set to betray farmers yet again. But that's not all, because we're going to come back to the Liverpool situation as well. Emma Wolf is here with us. She's going to be helping us look through the morning papers. Emma, very good morning to you. Liverpool suspect is a company director, it says on the front page of the Daily Mail. It seems as though everybody now knows precisely who it is. We can't reveal his name because obviously he has not yet been charged. The police are still asking him an awful lot of questions, trying to work out exactly what happened. Still an awful lot more questions than there are answers. The parade driver still being held, as we said, for attempted murder. But he's a father of 3 who lives in the cul-de-sac, appears to be a fine, upstanding member of the public. So a very mysterious serious situation is unfolding there. Plus, we'll be talking, of course, about the situation with the prison release. We mentioned it yesterday. Cops are basically saying, we can't cope with it. Don't let people, dangerous criminals, out of jail. We won't be able to watch them. We won't be able to stop them committing more crime. We won't be able to keep people safe. Meanwhile, apparently we're running out of water. Guess why? Because we've got too many immigrants coming into the country and the water is literally running out. So drink up, ladies and gentlemen, before they tell you you can't. It'll be against the law to have more than 1 cup of water every single day. Plus, the NHS doctors' strike. Yeah, that's right. The Marxists are back. They got 22% last year. Now they say they want about another 50%. Even Wes Streeting's had enough. He says the public have lost interest in them and no longer support them. Well, we could have told them that last year when you Wallies gave them 22%. Really said a bad word there. Sorry. 0344 499 1000. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. So here we are. It is Thursday morning. It is the 29th of May. We are nearing the beginning of June. Apparently, according to the reports from the weather people, it's been the sunniest spring since records began. That's nice, isn't it? It's been lovely. Unfortunately, this morning it's raining, however. I've been in Dubai for a few days, so I'm afraid I'm not used to it. So, you know, I'm going to complain.
But warm.
Rather warm, yeah.
Warm, 15 degrees when I was cycling in. And that was, it's very, very nice. I think we have to really appreciate, because very soon, especially at this time in the morning, it'll be back to those November, December days.
Yeah, well, it was 45 when I was in Dubai on Saturday.
Yeah, but that's just crazy. You
15.
literally... You can't go out in the heat, can you?
It was all right. I didn't mind it, actually. It was fine.
Do you find you move and walk slowly?
Yeah, you just don't run around in it. Yeah. You don't spend a lot of time in it. No. But you don't mind going out in it. A bit of breaking news overnight. A court in the United States has blocked Donald Trump from imposing sweeping global tariffs on imports. A 3-judge panel concluded the US president exceeded his authority when he unveiled additional taxes on foreign-made goods. Well, a bit late, isn't it? Because he's already done a load of trade deals with all the people that he put tariffs on. So what difference does it make? I mean, this is the new lawfare, isn't it? They'll now try from state to state and in some cases in national ways to try and prevent Donald Trump from doing what he's doing. But the effect of what he's doing has already happened, so I don't know what the significance of that is, really.
Of course it has, and yeah, they'll do everything they can to block him, won't they?
Yeah, I'm sure they will. We've got a whole bunch of stories to talk about on the front pages, lots of people doing different things. Liverpool suspect is a company director with the Mail. We'll get to that in a second. NHS doctors have lost public support, according to the front page of The Times. The Telegraph goes with a very weird story, an army of hackers to take on Putin. I mean, if you believe that, I've got some swampland to sell you, you know, somewhere in the middle of the Middle East. And then The Sun goes a completely different way. The last days of Rose West, a fascinating story. I didn't realise there was a big Netflix documentary coming up because you know how people have, you know, kind of really gone for true crime stories. Yeah. And it is an incredible story. I'm actually old enough to remember the actual court case and when the story broke and everything, and it was massive. So for anybody who doesn't know who Rose West is, I mean, she was one of the most horrific female serial killers in the history of Britain.
Mike, why have we spent goodness knows how many millions of pounds for 30 years keeping this absolute monster alive? I mean, to what end?
I know.
She is living a miserable, isolated existence. Yeah. I mean, the detail in the Sun story is really quite astonishing, how she lives and the kind of isolation, and you know, no one wants to know her, no one wants to be friends with her. Even the prison guards won't be bribed by her. She eats tomato soup for breakfast and watches nature documentaries, knits.
And just sits on
in
her
a
own.
cell.
Can't move, can't
can
walk.
barely walk. And it just say, what are we keeping? What have we kept her? Considering what she did nearly 30 years ago.
I mean,
what
I suppose
they did.
The only answer I can give you to that is that in the end, it's for our own kind of civilised society, I suppose, because either you have the death penalty or you don't.
I know.
I know there are some.
And that's
people,
why I struggle with the death penalty, because I just think, well, what are we keeping her going for?
Well, some people will say we should just get it back for people like her. I think the trouble is that you sort of diminish your own country by having it. So that's kind of where I am on it. You know, I think that there are certainly people who don't deserve to live, and she might be one of them. But I'm not sure you want the state, because the state gets everything wrong.
Of course they do. That's the problem. Of course.
And would you really entrust them to go around executing people? Because look where they are.
No, and look where we are now, with people being banged up in prison for a nasty tweet. Exactly. So I don't trust them on anything.
And even, you know, we had Helen Whately on yesterday, and I couldn't get her to say that Lucy Connolly should be released. She was like, you know, I don't want to talk about specific cases. And you go, well, why not? Why is it so difficult? Oh, it's quite difficult, complicated. How's it complicated?
How is it complicated?
You know, she's done a lot of time. She's done 10 months. Let her out. Why not?
It's one of the biggest scandals of, you know, this first government.
It really is.
The first month.
Absolutely right. Let's talk about a few of the other stories before we get to the front pages, though. We've got Talk exclusive, crooks cashing in on the waste racket. This is like a sort of a new county lines thing, because we've now got fly tipping has reached such an epic proportion now in this country that actually people don't know what to do. So now crooks are kind of cashing in and offering to remove people's rubbish and making vast amounts of money out of it, promising, you know, sort of, the ability to take things to a tip, promising people various different licences for them to do things, and crooks are pretending they've got licences. There's loads of money in it.
What was that saying? Where there's muck, there's brass.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, literally, this is kind of Mafia 2.0, isn't it? With these guys.
It's amazing.
The rubbish construction racket, it's absolutely appalling. But then again, when you look around the streets, it's not surprising that people are trying to make money out of this, because there are rubbish, and not just rubbish, but I mean, sofas and bathrooms and things chucked out on the streets, vast quantities.
Well, believe it or not, England's waste industry is worth £7 billion a year.
Actually, that doesn't surprise me.
But criminal gangs are now muscling in, undercutting legitimate firms and operating with near impunity. They're so brazen they're using diggers and tipper lorries to dump mountains of rubbish in plain sight.
And where are they dumping it all? Because they're
all over the place.
All over the place. They're charging people to take away stuff off their streets. And we've had the Birmingham you know, bins piling up recently. But even in regular cities where we are apparently having bin collections, it's completely astonishing how overnight suddenly your street can be filled with all this stuff. Where is it coming from?
Kent's Police and Crime Commissioner Matthew Scott says waste crime is the new organised crime. Group activity is apparently like county lines activity. That's how serious it is. Wembley, there's enough, apparently, the Environment Agency estimates waste crime costs the UK economy £1 billion a year. Illegal operators handling around 34 million tonnes of waste, enough to fill Wembley Stadium 30 times over.
But the thing is, it's funny, but when you look at the images on the screen, it's not funny at all. And also, there's something about it which is just so kind of visual, such an iconic representation of the fact that this country, like we saw in Birmingham, but more generally, this country's falling apart. The government, while messing around with all sorts of other things, can't even do the basics. The basics, which are local councils collecting people's waste. And I think this country is being filled with, I won't say invaded by it, being filled with people who aren't living in a particularly neighbourly way. They're not caring about their streets. When you have people pouring in, pouring out. You have Airbnb people coming in, coming out. You have all of this kind of disruption to cities and to the kind of fabric of how people used to live. It's like
people have literally no pride in where they live.
No pride in where they live. Because it's not anything
They have no stake in it, and they don't own anything there. They put there, it's all for free. People say things like this about the NHS. If you give somebody something for free, they don't actually respect it.
They're
not paying for it. So if you give somebody who comes to this country a free house, and you give them free clothes, and you give them free food, and you give them free everything, they're not going to bother, are they?
But they feel that they don't belong to that community, they don't belong to that town or that street, they don't care whether there's stuff all over the streets, whereas I know elderly people who live all over the country who help their neighbours with the bins and put the right stuff in the right bins and make sure that the cul-de-sac where they all live is tidy and neat, because they care.
Because they do care. I mean, we've done this before, but I'm going to ask you to do it again, because I know that the listeners and the viewers of this programme are loving the interaction that we offer you, and the fact that we let you have your say, because your say is very important. So send us pictures if you want, if you've got anything particularly horrific in your neighbourhood, or if you've got a lovely clean neighbourhood because somebody looks after it properly, you know, by all means send us pictures. You know the number. You can send them on WhatsApp, 0344 499 1000. The other big story I'd like to talk about first up, before we get into the front pages again, is drought of order. This great page 17 story in The Sun, where it says mass immigration means areas of Britain face running out of drinking water in just 10 years. So, you know, I've been saying this for I don't know how long. You know, it's not just about the numbers of people coming into the country and the expense of putting them into hotels. It's not just about the amount of people coming in on student visas. It's about the fact that infrastructure in this country, roads, railways, hospitals, doctors, dentists,
schools,
now
bins,
water, everything is overloaded because we've got too many people here.
Completely overloaded and really badly managed as well. We know about, I mean, particularly in this case, we know about the appalling state of the water industry, and that's kind of another story as well. But I mean, there's an image in The Sun talking about mass immigration. This is an area of Cumbria which is literally drying up. It could be a sort of, you know, it could be a Spanish coastal town that's drying up. But it's so true. It's all of these basic things which are falling apart in this country. We can't just keep taking more and more and more people.
No. And expect nothing to change.
And expect nothing to change, but somehow it's far right to say that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what happens when we start to run out of water?
Well,
because things are being rationed.
Well, they will be, because, you know, we'll see it, no doubt, as we always see every summer, a hosepipe ban where you're told you can't wash your car, you can't water the flowers, you know, you can't water the garden, you should only have one bath a week and all this kind of nonsense.
Well, yeah.
You know, that's how it will be.
But what happens when it gets
Christian
to drinking water?
was over in Spain. The hotel he was staying in were rationing their air conditioning.
And then they'll be rationing it. Exactly.
And they had a blackout there because they're woke and they can't figure out how to run a power grid. But this is from Environment Secretary Steve Reed, says he's planning to seize control of the planning system and force through 2 new giant reservoirs. Because, of course, thanks to the net zero maniacs and the Green Brigade and the environmental types, we haven't built any reservoirs in decades.
And this net zero madness is costing us billions already, 50 billion already.
But apparently building reservoirs is environmentally unsound. I don't understand why that would be. What's wrong with collecting water because it falls from the sky in a great big place where you can store it?
What is environmentally unfriendly?
How is that environmentally damaging?
What is even unpleasant about living near a reservoir? How absolutely lovely. I mean, this is crazy. This is absolutely terrifying. And the fact that we don't... And also, when this government say things like, oh, we're planning, it's like they're planning to build more prisons. When they say they're planning to build more reservoirs, get on with it, do it right now, because, look, we are running out of water.
In fact, use the prisoners to build the reservoirs, that's what I always say. Just a piece of information on the Spanish situation. In 2022, the Spanish government implemented a decree restricting air conditioning and heating settings in public spaces to save energy. And this is because of the profligacy of various different governments, including our own, who then get themselves into a bad place and then punish the people who pay for the services to say, well, you can't pay, you can't use them.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
And the net zero madness, it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even make sense to dig up the entire countryside and cover it in solar panels. It doesn't even make sense when you can't store the energy, when you don't have any of the basics in place. It's just people like Mad Miliband just going...
Yeah, he's been quiet lately. I haven't heard from him. Meanwhile, there's
probably on one of his Caribbean holidays.
Pictures of David Lammy, talking of Caribbean holidays. David Lammy having his picture taken in the Arctic on page 6
selfies
of the Daily
in
Mail.
the Arctic.
It's nice, isn't it?
Is he in Svalbard? Yeah, he's with the Northern Lights or something like that.
Yeah.
And look, how many air miles are these guys racking up? Lammy and Miliband between them.
He says, Mr. Lammy said the Arctic was becoming an increasingly important frontier for geopolitical competition and trade as melting sea ice opens up shipping routes and the potential to exploit oil, gas and mineral resources. Ed Miliband will be having an attack of the vapours. He'll be going, oh, my God, what, oil and gas and sea ice melting in the same sentence. Oh, my God, we can't do it.
Absolutely terrifying. Anywhere that Lammy visits, you know.
And he's got a hat on that says Arctic Station. It'd be good if he stayed up there for a while, wouldn't it?
It would be.
It's just not bother us. Let's talk a bit about the Liverpool story on front page of the Daily Mail. Liverpool suspect is a company director. Very strange story, this. We still can't really work out what's happened. The police obviously still can't work out what's happened. They've been extending him twice now to be questioned. 53-year-old, as they described him, white British male.
As they very quickly described him.
Yeah, they did. It now turns out he's married with 3 teenage children. Neighbours where he lives in a smart £300,000 4-bedroom detached property say he's a family man with well-behaved children, and they can't understand how this could have happened.
He seems to be a man of, you know, known in the local area. This is the West Derby area of Liverpool. This is quite close to me, actually. I'm not only a Liverpool fan, but basically 90% of my family live in Liverpool.
Okay,
and
so you know West Derby?
Yeah, my mum's a Liverpudlian. The area, I mean, basically all of my cousins and everybody are just saying it's just the sense of sadness and shock in the city is really, really... But it seems this man is, you know, a pillar of the community, a nice guy, a graduate, a company director... all of this stuff, so it just gets weirder and weirder.
So all the stories about him either being on drugs and or drunk may or... I mean, it doesn't mean they're not true, but it makes it more unlikely,
mental health crisis is also being suggested. It's very, very strange, isn't it?
Yeah, very strange
I think 79 have been injured. People are being released from hospital and sort of...
I don't think there's more than about 20 still in hospital.
Still in hospital now.
Not too many serious injuries, which is a miracle, really.
And maybe that's what the police are sort of having to wait for. I don't know why we're waiting on more information.
Yeah, but hopefully we'll hear more throughout the course of this day, and we'll bring it to you, of course. This from, who is it? Sonia. Morning, Mike. I live in West Norfolk. My nearest recycling centre is Wisbeach, 12 12 minutes away. Can't use it because it's on Cambridge. I had to call West Norfolk Council and make an appointment to use theirs. Absolutely crazy. It's why fly tipping is increasing, because you can't get access to the place where you want to dump the stuff that you've got to dump.
I mean, I don't go to a dump because I don't have a car, but I hear endlessly from friends saying, I've made an appointment at the dump, or and I've just, you know, that seems very, very odd, or massive queues at the dump where you have to take things at the weekend.
And there are certain aspects of certain things they won't take, certain people that you can't go in there.
People who work at dumps make a very, very good living with things they salvage.
Yeah, but this is why, obviously, the crooks have moved in and have gone, there's money to be made here, because people would rather somebody take the stuff away without knowing necessarily where it's going to end up.
Where does it end up? That's the problem, isn't it? And yeah, exactly. When you have stuff piling up, you'll pay anyone to take it away.
Yeah, absolutely right. Jeff says the answer to water shortage is build another 1.5 million homes. Yeah, absolutely right. That's what Angela Rayner wants to do. They were all celebrating the fact that they were building more homes yesterday because they put like 2 homes into the ground or something like that. Julie says this: good morning, Mike. We watch you every day from Dubai. Next time you're here, can you bring us a car sticker, as ours didn't arrive before we flew back from the UK? We will swap it for a beer or 2. Absolutely right. I think I deposited a few with my daughter, actually, but I don't know whether you'll be able to run into her and get one from her. We've got lots more to do. I must play you this little video before we go anywhere else, and we're going to keep playing it throughout the course of the morning. It's a new roundabout in Hemel Hempstead, right? And it's called the most woke roundabout of all time. It's so complicated that they've got to issue a video to explain how to go around. Have a look.
When driving, be prepared to give way to people walking and riding bikes. Be attentive and watch out for people walking and cycling as you exit.
Oh, they've got to stop again. It takes a long time to get around this roundabout.
So literally that car goes about 1 metre, about 3 stops. Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. It's in Hemel Hempstead. It's been controversial with locals who have dubbed it Britain's most woke roundabout, and it's been branded very confusing. Hertfordshire Council there putting out a video on how to use it.
These roundabouts are insane. I live on the Old Street roundabout, and they've made it into a not roundabout anymore. It's basically a half roundabout
now, isn't it? Yeah.
And even as a cyclist, and I know you hate cyclists, it's utterly confusing.
Yeah.
You can go, no, you can't go.
It's dangerous for cyclists, isn't it?
Very dangerous. Yeah. Suddenly you're cycling towards things, and everything comes flying at you from the other direction. Right. I don't think anyone knows what's going on. And it's not a roundabout anymore.
And I've driven, I mean, I went to college around there, so I know that area really well. And it didn't used to be like that.
No, it used to be a roundabout.
And now, if you go there at night, there are so many lights that you can't actually tell which one you're supposed to...
What is going on?
You're supposed to adhere to, you know. So there's a green light there. Oh, that's not yours. There's a green arrow there. That's not yours. There's a green one straight away. That's there. There's another red light there.
It's massively dangerous.
You have no idea.
Yeah, it's massively dangerous.
People don't die there on a daily basis.
I think they probably will. And then there are things where the bike can go, but the bus can't go, but you're both in the same lane. And then the cars can go, but suddenly everything's heading towards you.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. Anyway, we'll be playing more from the magic roundabout, as I'm calling it, the most woke roundabout in Britain. Absolutely unbelievable stuff. We want many, many more of your messages. Let us know what's going on with the fly tipping. Let us know what the water situation is where you are. Also, we'll be talking about the dreaded black hole that Rachel Reeves has now created. £35 billion worth. Much bigger than the one she supposedly inherited from the Tories. 6:23.
Nigel Farage's promises add up to over £100 billion. £100 billion. That is Liz Truss times 2.5. And he has not the first idea how he's going to pay for any of these promises. So he stands there on these stages and at rallies, throwing out all these promises. I'm going to spend extra money on this. I'm going to cut that tax. All these promises, well over £100 billion. You know, Nigel Farage has never been in government, hasn't had to explain a record.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham, 6:25. Of course, we're here all the way through until 10 o'clock. It's the home of common sense. It's the one place where you get the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Emma Wolf is here. We've been talking about water shortages due to mass immigration. Nigel from Brittany says, reference that water shortage due to mass immigration. Don't forget, BBC always claims water shortages on climate change, never on immigration. They never want to talk about immigration, do they? I mean, they've now been sort of forced into it, but everything is down to climate change.
Of course it is. The very basic fact that more people need more water. I mean, really, if you compare how much one person...
It's not difficult, is it?
It's really not rocket science in this case.
Yeah.
Climate change, yes.
Yeah.
I know there has been a change in the climate up and down.
Yeah.
But when you actually look at the impact of one person or one large family or, you know, people taking showers and baths and drinking and using water in their property, and the fact, I mean, it's
all you've got to do is look at what they do for these festivals in the summer. You know, we're into festival season already. I've got friends of mine saying, oh, we're off to such and such a festival. It's all marvellous. And they do it for months. If you set up a festival for 100,000 people and 200,000 people turn up, you're not going to have enough water. It's as simple as that.
Exactly.
All of the plans that you've made are going to be... You're not going to have enough food. You're not going to have enough, you know, facilities for all of them to use, because if it's double the number, you have twice the pressure on everything. And that's what people don't seem to get.
And when you don't even know, when you have no control over the amount of immigration coming into your country, when you haven't planned for it and you won't even admit that it's happening, then of course you're going to end up up a Gumtree.
Why, you know, why are the trains so busy? Why is the tube so busy? Why are the roads so busy?
Why can't I get an appointment at the NHS? Why are the schools so completely terrible? Well, why do you think?
Exactly right. Speaking of the NHS, doctors on the front page of the Times this morning, they've been told that strikes will harm efforts to heal the NHS. This is, I mean, I said this last year when Wes Streeting got in. The first thing he did was he gave them 22%.
22% to end the strike.
To end the strike.
Really? And guess what? Now they're back with their begging bowl.
Yeah, which was 23 billion. And he said, we fixed the NHS problems because we've stopped the doctors from going on strike anymore. And the first 23 billion investment into the NHS all went to junior doctors, right? Who apparently don't want to be called junior doctors anymore.
Resident doctors.
They want to be called resident doctors, which is a bit weird since they don't seem to spend much time in residency. But apparently 39% of the public support doctors striking over pay, down from 52% when they went on strike.
And I think
some people in this country are idiots. I'm sorry to say this. Don't support people for going on strike, because in the end it will come back and bite you on the backside.
I think it's lower than 39%. If you talk to people in general, the public support for doctors going on strike like this, greedy doctors going on strike, has absolutely, I think it's gone through the floor.
It has fallen through the floor.
And frankly, these doctors, I mean, Wes Streeting, in this article in the Times, he writes something really kind of lily-livered about, oh, you know, obviously no one does this job for the money. So why are they striking again about pay? Because there's no kind of pretense now that it's about anything other, working conditions, safety. No, it's about pay.
Exactly.
So they got 22% this year. They got 5.4%, sorry, last year, 5.4% this year, the highest of all the public sector awards. And guess what? They want more.
They're now saying they want 50% of a pay rise.
This is an absolute joke. And these are the people that go in, and I just want to say, because I know listeners will be going, but there are some amazing doctors, many amazing doctors and amazing nurses on an individual basis out there. But when you have something like the BMA, I was debating with the professor guy, I can't even remember his name, the guy who runs the BMA, deeply unpleasant, politicised organisation, absolute Marxist, pretending it was about all these other things. And they're asking for, as you say, 50% effectively, when the rest of us haven't had anything like that.
It's not even about try. Yeah, but it's not even about whether any of us, the rest of us, have had it. I mean, that's our own problem. I mean, you know, I don't buy this idea that, you know, they shouldn't get it because nobody else gets it.
I do buy the idea they go on about the cost of living.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Everybody in this country is facing the cost of living.
Yes, but equally...
None of us had 22% last year.
But equally, Emma, the point is that, you know, they've had the cost of living increase. Inflation is no longer running at 11%. You know, it is running at a high level. But the fact is they've got a 22... It's not running at 22%. They've had a 22% pay rise, plus another 5.4, as you say. That's practically 30%. It's probably a third more than they were getting.
So now they're being balloted and they're threatening 6 months of rolling strikes between now and next January.
Totally and utterly ridiculous. And basically, you know what's going to happen. They will go on strike. West Streeting will end up having to give them more money, even though we don't have it.
Yeah, we don't have it, and it does matter.
Which takes us on to Rachel Reeves and her new £35 billion black hole, which she has now found herself right in the middle of, because they don't know how to manage money. Labour governments never do.
Do we need any more proof that this woman has her math skills, her mathematical skills, her ability to be the Chancellor, to run this country's finances, are, I mean, completely discredited?
Yeah.
I think I probably did better in my maths GCSE, and I did
Your son would run the country
badly.
Better than her, right?
Another £35 billion black hole.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, what's she been doing? Taking pennies off the pensioners, pennies off the farmers, attacking private schools, and handing out or signing off these huge pay rises to the public sector.
Unbelievable.
I mean, it just doesn't work. The maths do not add up.
No, the sums don't add up, because it turns out now that she's going to print. If she introduces a £1,000 increase onto the pension winter fuel allowance, right, so that more people can actually get it, 1.6 billion in the first year, a total cost of 7.3 billion up to 2029. A 3,000 increase would cost 23 billion. Meanwhile, add to that a standalone abolition of the 2-child benefit cap, estimated to cost a total of 10.2 billion to the taxpayer. 3.4 billion for the PIP benefit cuts is going to cost an actual 35 billion in all sorts of other ways. So, I mean, they've stewarded themselves into a cul-de-sac of doom, haven't they?
Who's working for her? I mean, can't anyone work a calculator and just do the basic maths when they announce policies, when they're making plans? What's she doing?
I don't understand how she ever became Chancellor. You remember, we might have to go back and play Keir Starmer and the first woman Chancellor. Young women and girls will look up to her, and he had that ridiculous face on. And what a complete disaster.
I would happily just watch them both announcing, what was it, that theme park in Blackpool?
The theme park. Yeah, we might have to roll them out.
Well, it's not often that we have good news, they say, with their robotic, weird smiles and creepy faces. And the helmet hair and everything. And then they both try to smile. Which Starmer and Reeves trying to smile is the thing of nightmares.
They've obviously been told to talk and smile at the same time, which is actually quite hard to do.
It's really... Well, because if you're not smiling naturally, Mike, if you don't know how to smile or be a nice person, you kind of, you end up being Starmer. And you say things like bananas and sausages and free the sausages, because you know what you're talking about.
You know what you're talking about, yeah. Speaking of not knowing what you're talking about, King Charles has been in Canada, right? Have a look at this, because he went over there to talk about all sorts of things, including opening the State Opening of Parliament, and talking about how, you know, Canada's very much a sovereign country and all the rest of it. He also decided to plant a tree, because he's a great big environmentalist, right? And I think we've got some footage of him planting a tree. Now, here he is. There he is with Camilla. He's got a shovel. He's holding it up. He's planted a tree because obviously that signifies how green he is and his recognition of... But unfortunately for him, there's also a 27-car motorcade which takes him from the tree planting to his Airbus 330. And there he goes, flying back all those thousands of miles.
It's OK. He planted that tree. It'll offset the whole lot.
One tree. I mean, seriously, I think he would have needed to plant an entire forest in order to cover the carbon footprint for that. I don't mind people flying. I love it. I mean, I flew myself to Dubai and back. I didn't plant any trees.
Did you fly? You didn't...
I didn't plant any trees.
Didn't swim?
I didn't swim. I didn't go on a bike. I didn't plant any trees. But I don't bang on about...
But it's the hypocrisy. It's the fact that these celebrities who take it upon themselves to tell us what they're doing, and then they're on their private island. Or Charles, I mean, why does he need a 27-car motorcade?
I know.
Why do they need that? Why do they need to go on... These guys maybe need to go on private jets, but in general, there are planes flying everywhere. Get on in first class if you must. There's so much hypocrisy, and then the rest of us are being lectured about, you know, turn down your heating and don't have one holiday a year with your family that you've saved up for. You're not allowed to do that.
No, and don't drink any water. I'm going to continue to drink water through this show, as I always do.
Such a rebel. Mike Graham, the rebel.
Because this could be the last glass of water I ever see if things carry on the way they are. 6:34.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of common sense. Morning, Mike. When I lived in South Croydon, says Mark in Caterham, I once walked to the dump as I had a small piece of furniture. I was turned away and told to drive as cars only can be allowed in. But the queue was almost at the end of my road. I asked, what if I didn't have a car? And they said, you can't use the dump. Madness. Incredible.
That is
how about
insane.
This? Jamie says, Mike, my county council switch our streetlights off at midnight to save money. I'm in Cornwall. I mean, these are the people that have taken all your council tax money, stuffed it all into their pensions and their staff salaries and their DEI contracts and all the rest of it. And meanwhile, they can't have the lights switched on. They're literally, the lights are off and there's nobody home. What's wrong with these people? And how do they get away with it?
The idea that you can't get into the dump with a piece of furniture that needs recycling because you don't have a car,
I know,
is actually crazy.
Isn't it?
That's how far it's gone, the
madness.
And
also, these are the same people that will talk about recyclable, reusable, replenishing, renewable, sustainable living.
And that's my big problem.
But you've got to have a car.
All this ULEZ stuff is that the Mayor of London has really forced a lot of people to ditch perfectly usable. Like my mum had a lovely old banger that wasn't ULEZ compliant because she lives in central London. So literally there is another car in landfill because she can't replace it. And by the way, have you seen the latest on electric vehicles? Guess what? They lose their value basically the minute you drive them out. I know you're a fan of electric vehicles.
To be fair, all cars do lose value.
Of course they do, but not that much.
But electric vehicles have a particularly low second-hand value because nobody knows how long the battery is going to last.
Exactly.
And if the battery does die, it's an awful lot of money to replace it.
Exactly.
And also, we're now going to be faced with charges. If you have an EV, you're going to be faced with road tax, you're going to be faced with congestion charges. All of that free stuff is going because they've worked out, too many people have got electric cars now, so we have to start charging them. It's madness. Absolutely
no, the shine
crazy.
is definitely coming off electric cars and the damage that they do and the batteries and all of that.
Let's have a look at the Heathrow boss. Remember him?
Yes, I do.
How many months ago was it when they had the big blackout due
I can
to the
tell
fire?
you exactly when it was. It was in the middle of March. It was my first holiday in 4 years, and I had to tell my 4-year-old when he woke up that morning, oh, by the way, darling, you know that holiday you've been counting down to for the last 3 months? We're not going, by the way. And he was literally in tears. And apparently the Heathrow boss was blithely sleeping all the way through it.
Yeah, apparently this is Thomas Waldby, who's from Denmark, apparently. During the chaos after an electricity substation fire knocked out power, leaving 200,000 passengers stranded. It was back in March. He was paid 3.2 million last year. He apparently was out in London at some function, right? And some people said that he obviously decided he had to go home because he'd had enough. I don't know if he was the worse for wear, but he got home and apparently he put his phone on the bedside table and it went automatically into silent mode. Now, I don't know about you, but I mean, I've had problems with my phones in the past. Sometimes the alarm hasn't gone off because I haven't set it.
Yes.
Sometimes it's been in silent mode because I put it in silent mode.
My phone's only ever been in silent mode if I've put it in silent mode.
It never has gone, as far as I'm aware, into silent mode by itself.
No, sometimes it might run out of battery. That has happened to me.
Yeah.
But not going into silent mode without me putting it into... In fact, mine is called airplane mode.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
You might even want to look into that.
Yeah, exactly right. But he says his phone switched to silent mode somehow by itself.
And that's complete and utter nonsense. And the big scandal...
That's a cool phone.
Very cool phone. The real scandal about all this nonsense is that we worked out, we suddenly realised that one of Europe's busiest airports, is it Europe's? I think it's Europe's busiest airport.
It's one of the busiest in the world.
It's basically run from a small is dependent on this small bit of thingy on the outskirts. And if you know Heathrow and Uxbridge and all that area around there...
The substation. But also
it was
we
a little
know...
substation. There was like a fire there and everything went down.
And we're looking at a picture there, but you see, everything didn't quite go down. You see, this is where they've been slightly disingenuous in the review as to how they dealt with it. And bizarrely, they've concluded that they dealt with it very well.
Yeah,
of course they did, right? Because I remember talking that morning to a guy who said, I'm actually looking at the substation fire now. I can see it. It's at the end of my street. He said it was so hot at one point, we could feel the heat. Yeah. And I said, how's the situation with the power? And he said, oh, it's fine. It was only out for an hour, right? So his power was restored. He lives next to the substation. Heathrow Airport could have also restored their power, but they didn't have it in every single part of the buildings, so they decided to shut the airport down. It was their decision to cancel your holiday, right? They could have easily let you go on holiday, and of course they used that great excuse, which was, oh, well, if something had gone wrong, you would have wanted us to shut the airport. Yeah, but it's your job.
Because a few of the lavatories or whatever. But also,
it's your job to
why
work
do they
out...
not have endless backup generators just to keep an airport like that busy running?
Yeah.
And if I was the head of British Airways and Virgin and whoever that ran out of Heathrow, I would be suing. I mean, Heathrow, they're not out of the woods yet. It must have cost them billions in terms of compensation and all of that.
Because they'll have to pay.
Responsible.
They'll have to pay the airlines a lot of money, of course.
Yes.
And one of the things I said yesterday when I came back from Dubai Airport, by the way, is amazing, absolutely astonishing, and beautifully cool. You wouldn't know it was hot outside. When I got back to Heathrow was actually hotter inside as an airport than Dubai was. No doubt somebody had told them to switch off the air conditioning because it was just a bit muggy. I mean, incredible.
It's when you return to the UK or you get on the tube at Heathrow and you see the dirt and the filth and the grime and the crime and the fact that you can't take your phone out on public transport. When you've been abroad and you come back and you think, really...
You do notice things when you're away that actually seem to work better than everything else. Speaking of airports, by the way, here's a bit of footage for you. Welcome back to Britain if you've been away. Here's an intoxicated EasyJet passenger refused to allow to board at Manchester Airport. Have a look.
And you're standing there doing at me like you want to do something. What are you going to do? Excuse me, do it. Yeah, you're going to do it, man.
Mate, stay calm, stay calm, stay calm. Go stay calm.
You're going to do it, man. Stay calm. You're going to hit little stay calm. You're going to hit me? Is that what he's going to do, hit me? For paying all that money to get on a flight, he's going to hit me? Is that what you're going to do to me? For getting on a flight? Hit me?
No, we're not.
Is that what you're going to do?
No one's hitting you. No one's hitting you.
What he's got sir.
What is wrong with people? I mean, you know, he gets a slap from the guy on EasyJet, which is very, very brave of him to do it. But, you know, that's sometimes what you have to do with these maniacs.
Of course. How else are you meant to stop them and restrain them?
Yeah.
By the way, in Dubai, which is in a desert, was there a water shortage? Or
there was plenty of water.
Was there plenty of water?
Plenty of water.
Funny that.
Loads of swimming pools.
Funny that. Was there water in the airport?
Well, do you know what? People used to make fun of me when I said this, and I said it a couple of years ago. You know, what's wrong with a desalination plant or two? You know, everyone went, oh, yeah, that's a great idea. Why don't you just put, like, salt water on the fields? People are so stupid in this country. You know, in the Middle East, what do you think they do? They're surrounded by water.
Exactly.
They use desalination plants so that they don't run out of it. Because, technically speaking, if you did pour water into a bucket in Dubai, probably by the end of the day, it would have all evaporated.
Exactly.
So what you do is you generate your own water by actually making it drinking water and making it usable for public consumption by taking the salt out. It's called desalination.
And they seem to manage okay.
They seem to manage okay. It's 6:42. We've got lots more to do. On the phone silent thing, says Skoda, and some of these new Samsungs could be set up unwittingly to do certain things when you do certain actions, i.e. mine switches my Wi-Fi on when I get to any place I've used Wi-Fi before. Not sticking up for him, but it is entirely possible. Well, Wi-Fi. Well, no. Well, my phone does that. When you move into an area where you've got Wi-Fi and you've had Wi-Fi there before, it does that.
But you can also turn it off so it doesn't connect. I mean, yes, you do.
But that's not the same as it going into silent mode.
No. And when you get a new phone, you have to fiddle with the settings, right?
Yeah.
There's no suggestion that he just picked up a new phone that evening.
No.
Oh, I don't think there's any suggestion that he picked up a new phone that evening and that the settings had been set. That I would completely understand.
He says he says that his phone went into silent mode automatically, right? Now, I would suggest if you're running an airport, that's probably not the best phone to have. If that's what your phone does, I'm sure you can stop it from doing that. I don't believe that that's what his phone does.
I don't believe that's what
I'm saying he's talking absolute and utter cobblers. That's what I'm saying.
But also, there should be someone very, very, very senior who can be contactable overnight. We're not pretending that everybody should leave. I don't think you should leave your phone on at night with the phone ringer going because everybody needs sleep.
Yeah.
But if you're the boss of Heathrow, either you're contactable or you're not.
Yeah.
But to protect, you know, it's just not.
When you're the CEO of a major operation like Heathrow Airport, you should never be out of touch. I don't care. You should never be out of touch. No, never. Because that's you get paid £3.2 million a year.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
Right? If the airport's about to be shut down, you need to be able to answer your phone, mate. I don't care. You know, it's like when I was a news reporter and I wasn't getting paid anything like $3.2 million.
Your phone was on?
My phone was on.
I know.
I always had a passport with me because those are the rules of the game.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't answer your phone, you get fired.
Yeah.
Simple as
You've
that.
got to be ready to go.
And so should he be fired. It's that simple. 6:44.
This DEI stuff is actually very radical. It comes from a kind of very early 70s cultural form of Marxism, which very crudely divides the world into oppressed and oppressor. And there's no nuance. So if you are white and male, you're sort of double oppressor. Quotas have been imposed very radically. Meritocracy goes out the window. Whiteness training gets rolled out. When you then look at the data, which I've been doing with a Harvard professor, they don't work. We're spending globally $14 billion a year on DEI programs.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:45. I'm Mike Graham, with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Emma Wolf is here as well. Andy from Nott says part of the water problem is that when we were in the EU, we were banned from constructing any more reservoirs. I think it was on the grounds of environmental concerns. Yes, it was. And, of course, our politicians were too wet, no pun intended, to tell them to do one. Well, this is exactly the problem. That for years we were told, and I said to this to you earlier, that building reservoirs is somehow environmentally unfriendly. But nobody asked the question. I mean, if I'd been in government, I'd have gone, well, what's environmentally unfriendly about it?
Collecting water from the sky.
Collecting water which falls free from the sky so that we can have it when it gets a bit dry.
Yes.
Seems like a sensible thing to do.
Where else is it going to come from?
Here's one from Barry in North Yorkshire. It's not only water that's affected by the huge numbers invading our shores. Just imagine the extra sewage they create. When was the last time we had a new treatment plant? I'm sure it will only get worse. Not something I want to think about, but you're right. Same problem, you know, oversubscription, you know, overuse, overpowering, overbearing. Everything breaks.
And that really is very basic. If there are more people, there is going to be more sewage, and that is absolutely grim to think about.
Now, we're going to speak about the cops who have now come out and said that they can't cope with this early prison release scheme. That's another Starmer genius idea. Let's get a voice note from Sean.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby here. Just a couple of months ago, Keir Starmer told us that he was going to make the streets safer for young girls and women. And I believe him, because nothing says I'm going to make the streets safer more than releasing loads of perverts, sex offenders, rapists, women abusers, thieves, and whilst at the same time importing loads of foreign men from strange cultures. Bit funny, isn't it, Mike? Great show, mate.
It is a bit funny, yeah. I mean, no question at all that it turns out that the MI5, the Metropolitan Police and the National Crime Agency have all told Keir Starmer it's a bad idea to release these people because it might be detrimental to society. I mean, do you have to go to university to learn this stuff?
Yeah. And this is kind of
some really horrible people over there. Let's get them all out into the open.
This isn't just the average cop going, you know, we're underfunded, under-resourced. This is Mark Rowley, head of the Met, saying, and he wrote yesterday, didn't he, in the Times, saying, we can't cope. All our major police forces are completely overburdened. The problem is, as well, they're expected to also be suddenly online crime cyber experts, spending all their time finding hurty words on social media and keeping the streets safe. When we have a problem with immigration in this country, and we have soaring levels of knife crime. And we have the mayor saying silly things about cannabis as we saw yesterday.
Unbelievable.
Well, frankly, if you live in London, it's legal anyway. It's
pretty
completely
much. I think
legal.
that's the case for most parts of the country, to be honest.
I
don't think
wherever you go.
I don't think anyone's going to call me up today and say, oh, we saw the police arresting a guy for smoking a joint yesterday. That's never going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And, in terms of Starmer and his safer streets thing, why on earth, how on earth do his policies actually follow through what he's saying? Because when you release, as your caller there said, when you release these people back onto the streets, I was going to say these guys, and they are guys, when you release these guys back onto the streets, it's absolutely terrifying.
Well, we know what happened last time.
For their former victims, but also for women in general, women and girls in general.
A sex offender who was released managed to commit a sex offence within moments of his release, and somebody else was murdered by a murderer, and many of the people who were released had to be recalled. The probation service can't cope either. They've said that they haven't got enough electronic tags to put these people on anyway, and even if they did have, they haven't got enough people to monitor them.
To follow them up.
And so
you don't just put a tag on someone.
It doesn't stop people committing crime just because they've got an electronic tag on.
And in many places of the country, these tags are a kind of badge of honour. You know, they're quite funny, and no one is following you up anyway. They're not tracking what you're doing, where you're going. what you're up to.
Exactly right.
And then these people are back in prison anyway, again.
Yeah, quite right. One here from Keith who says, reference litter. Our town used to have a chap who, with his barrow, kept the streets immaculate, totally devoted to his job. He was known and respected by everyone. We now have a shiny new pickup truck with 3 guys in high-vis who rarely pick up any litter. Now our once lovely town is strewn with litter blowing everywhere. And again, you know, everywhere you go in Dubai, there's somebody, you know, mopping the floor, there's somebody sweeping up, there's somebody picking up everything, and there isn't any litter on the streets anyway, because people don't drop it.
And the thing is, Mike, that's a job.
Yeah.
Someone is cleaning the streets. I respect those people. I think it's brilliant that they are cleaning the streets and keeping it nice. But A, you have people who just don't care about where they live.
Yeah.
I mean, your caller there said about a lovely, our once lovely town.
Yeah.
People don't feel like that about where they live if they're just arrived off a dinghy or off a plane.
They
don't care.
It is
and
astonishing,
also,
isn't it?
as you say, in Dubai, but in many places in Europe as well. My brother lives in Germany. You do not drop litter in the street. You just don't do it.
Right.
You care about where you live.
Because there is a sense.
There is a sense of civic pride and duty. And if you drop litter in the street, like if you cross on a red light, which I find quite annoying, but in Germany they go like that, if you cross on a red. If you drop litter in the street, someone will come up to you and say, why have you dropped that litter?
Right.
What are you doing? Why are you throwing it out of your car
how many
window?
times do you see people chucking litter out of a car?
Out of a car window,
you know,
in
when
this
you're
country.
cycling behind them.
Yeah.
Front page of The Guardian, which I don't normally look at particularly. John McDonnell, who is, of course, the great ally of...
First time I've ever agreed with John McDonnell.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy Corbyn... Well, the thing about John McDonnell is I spoke to him quite a lot during the 2019... Labour campaign, actually, when Corbyn was running to be Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether you agree with him or not, and I don't agree with him on pretty much everything. He's a rare Labour man, he's got brains. He's got brains and he knows what he's talking about. He's basically calling for a grassroots leadership challenge to the Labour government and to Keir Starmer. He says this, we need to stand up and assert ourselves to take back control of our party. We may not just lose a government if we don't, we could lose an entire party. So he's warning that Labour could go the way of the Conservatives. Conservatives now are more or less a dead zone. They don't really seem to have much relevance. Nobody wants to vote for them. They're coming 3rd and sometimes 4th now in polls.
Dominic Cummings has been saying they're over.
Yeah.
They're literally over. But John McDonnell talks about a part there, the Starmer's government of callousness and political incompetence.
Yes.
And I think that beautifully, good on John McDonnell, that sums it up. It's the vindictiveness, the callousness and utter political incompetence, economic incompetence.
Yeah, they are so incompetent. It's hard to believe.
Really hard to believe.
Now, we've got some pictures which have come in from Nigel Howard, who's one of our exclusive photographers here at Talk. He sent some pictures in. This is something that's happened overnight because it's happened in Keir Starmer's own constituency, right? And believe it or not, you know, it just shows that not everybody who wants to demonstrate about Gaza. This is a demonstration against the PIP and the disability cuts which are coming, and that's St Pancras Station, which is obviously right smack in the middle of Keir Starmer's constituency, and the pictures say, you know, basically, it starts off with being sick or disabled isn't a choice, but you could choose not to punish 7,765 of us in Holborn and St Pancras. You are heartless. Is heartless cuts the legacy that you want. Keir Starmer stopped the cruel cuts. This is all ahead of the disability vote, which an awful lot of Labour backbenchers are very unhappy with, aren't they?
Yeah.
And it shows you the depth of feeling. I mean, basically, Keir Starmer has managed to unite the country against him.
Yeah,
it's
really
the one thing that he's managed to do.
Even in
everybody hates
leafy
him.
Central London, this is Camden, basically, where I grew up. This is Holborn and St Pancras, and they are up in arms about that, and that is people in his local constituency.
Yeah.
And you know what? The Prime Minister just seems to never respond, just to ignore this kind of the people's expressing their feelings about this stuff.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Absolutely
respond.
ridiculous. One here from Damon, who says, morning Mike, Damon from Wigan, currently in Palomas, very nice. I travel with Jet2 from Liverpool Airport and the service and security checks have been hassle-free. I wouldn't use Manchester Airport because it's just chaos with the checks, etc. But watching your clip of the idiot drunk and shouting at staff, it's simple. If you have too much to drink and you hold the plane up, then the airport should bill you for time wasting because that would soon sober the Muppets up quick. Great show as always. Yeah, I mean, it seems incredible to me that people would get that messed up before they get on a flight.
It is incredible.
Why would you?
But actually, when you go to UK airports, the first thing people do, 7 in the morning, 6 in the morning, whatever, first thing they do is sit down at a bar and start slamming back pints.
Yeah.
So I'm not one of these kind of people that wants to ban people from drinking before their flight, before they go on holiday.
Oh, no, but again,
nothing wrong getting to the airport, having a glass of champagne if you're going on holiday.
Yeah.
But it is problematic when you have absolute idiots like that standing there. You just want to get on your flight and just go.
Yes.
And you've got those idiots.
This is the problem, isn't it? You know, We shouldn't have to have a country that you have to ban people from doing things from. We used to have a country which was actually filled with people who were relatively reasonable. Yeah. And, you know, it was a very unusual situation to see somebody that drunk trying to do anything. Whereas now, it's not unusual.
Drunk and violent and aggressive.
And
exactly.
Shouty.
In the old days, I think people would have gladly had a glass of something before they got on their flight as a kind of celebration.
Exactly.
But then they wouldn't kick off at the air flight, literally getting on the flight like that. I know.
It is bizarre. Good morning, Mike. Here's a cunning plan, says Louise from Ipswich. Maybe send somebody to bang on the airport manager's door if he is needed and doesn't answer his phone. Well, that's another thing. I mean, you know, in the days of say, for example, if I was needed in here and I wasn't answering my phone, somebody would come and you know, ring the bell.
Well, that's what I mean.
Where the hell are you?
That's what I was trying to say. If he is really not contactable, doesn't he have a PA who can get to his house and go, wake up, or ring his wife and say, wake him up? He's got to, I mean, in the old days, in the kind of James Bond days, someone would knock on your door. To the chief of, you know, MI5 or whoever it was.
Unless he was on the missing list because he wasn't actually at home at all.
Where was he?
I don't know.
No,
I mean,
the plot thickens.
Entirely wrong for me to suggest that, obviously, because it couldn't possibly be true. Ian in Essex says, I'm sure the bloke at Heathrow has a doorbell and people know where he lives. What is wrong with this country? Why couldn't they go wake him up?
Well, that's what I mean.
It's a good point.
The secretary who looks after the boss's business, who could go and get him out of bed.
Personal assistant, please.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But no, but this was a major crisis. This was Heathrow Airport.
Yeah.
This wasn't just like a local problem that someone needed to... You know, this was a major kind of decision.
This was a world-affecting event, right? And this guy says, oh, I couldn't do anything about it because my phone was on silent.
I was asleep. Sorry,
I was sleeping. Let's have a look at Peter Mandelson, you know, my Lord Mandelson, Prince of Darkness.
Must we?
Who is now, of course, the ambassador to the United States of America. Everybody thought when that story first surfaced that it wouldn't happen, but there he is. He got questioned by Sky News the other day on his links with Jeffrey Epstein. This is good.
In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
He was in jail at the time for soliciting prostitution from a minor.
And my knowledge of him is something that I regret. I wish I'd never met him in the first place.
Why did you have an association with him? Because he was in jail at the time.
Why did many people meet him? He was a prolific networker, and I wish I'd never met him in the first place.
I've heard him called many things, Jeffrey Epstein.
Prolific, and he nearly said paedophile.
Networker, yeah. I mean, I wish I'd never met him. Well, you could have not met him. You didn't have to meet him.
And he was in jail at the time.
And he was in jail, and you didn't have to go to his house.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the Diddy case at the moment in America. There's people realising that they're pals.
Yeah, what were you doing at the party? Oh, nothing.
What on earth?
Nothing.
What were you doing in his private jet? What were you?
Yeah, I wasn't in that room. I don't know what happened. I've been told.
They'll answer some questions, but not others. No, I'm not commenting on my personal.
Yeah.
What on earth?
But also, Mandelson is such a sort of embarrassment and an arrogant man, where he says, I'm not going to answer any questions. Well, I'm sorry, you're paid by the public, mate. We need you to answer some questions because, you know, frankly, it's your job. Yeah. You know, you don't get to just do what you like. Unbelievable stuff. A couple of other things to talk about. Glasgow Council, apparently, the worst sick council in Britain, has clocked up 10,000 sick days, I think, in the last 8 years. That's not bad going, is it?
It's really not bad
going. So many people calling in sick. They've already had something like 650 call in sick this year already.
Do you know what's really interesting is when you're freelance or when you work in the private sector, you think back how many sick days you've had compared to these doctors and nurses and council workers and people in the public sector who literally have, I don't know, 5, 10... I don't think I've had a sick day, literally, in years. No. You just get on with it.
You do.
You have to get on with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for people who, say, have to take some time off because they're having an operation or something like that, that's different. This is literally people just going...
I mean, people feeling a bit ropey, feeling tired, having a mental health day, having a duvet day.
Duvet day and all that. This is good from Gary in Rochester. Phones can be set to go into Do Not Disturb mode between certain times, but you can make it so certain numbers can still get through.
There should have been an override for his emergency.
Yeah.
And he's probably claiming, oh, it just
But he's not saying that. He's saying,
off.
He's saying it just went into standard silent mode. Mine activates, says Gary from Rochester, at 10:30 p.m. Turns off at 6 a.m. in case Mike Graham tries to phone me.
Oh, I love that.
That's nice. I'm sorry, Gary. I feel like I should call you now. Maybe I'll call you in the break. We've got lots more coming up. Emma, thank you very much indeed. Loads more to talk about. James Price is going to join us. We'll talk more about the junior doctors who don't want to be called junior doctors anymore, apparently. Apparently makes them upset. So I'm going to keep calling them junior doctors. Don't forget there's a Morning Glory podcast that comes out as soon as this show is over every single weekday morning. We'll talk more about the water running out in this country and common sense. Where's it all gone? You can't find it anywhere, apart from right here. This is Morning Glory. See you after the news.
You said you don't like Polish people and you don't trust them.
That's not what I said.
Yes, that's what you said.
No. You must have misheard me. I like Polish people a lot.
Christ me, I never heard of this from you. I've heard this on the radio.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Do you want to have a listen? Have a listen to what I said, okay? Listen to this. I don't like Poles. I wasn't talking about Polish people.
Yes.
I was talking about polls, you know, when you do a poll to find out what people think. You know, like they say 55% of people vote Remain, 45% vote Leave. That's a poll. I wasn't talking about...
but later on you said you don't trust them, so you don't...
I don't trust them. No, that's true. I don't trust polls, and I don't like polls because I don't trust them. But that's not Polish people.
No, that's what I thought. That's what I pick up.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Listen, well, I would never say anything like that.
No, so in this case, I never learned English.
No, listen, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. I'm very glad you called in because I wouldn't want you walking around thinking that Mike Graham is a horrible bigot. He doesn't like Polish people.
No, I was thinking, what the hell? What's going on here? Actually, I'm actually back and explain a few things.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. The weather is a little bit inclement, I'd have to say, this morning, even though we apparently have had the sunniest spring on record, since records began. As you can see there, the Morning Glory podcast is still up and running. You'll be able to get your hands on that every single weekday morning, shortly after this show ends every time at 10 o'clock. It's the best of what you might have missed. So if you have missed any of it, or anybody who you know has missed any of it, just recommend it to them. And it's a thing of great beauty. Coming up in this hour, James Price joins us, former government advisor, of course. He'll talk to me about the £35 billion black hole that Rachel Reeves appears to have created, notwithstanding the fact that she says she inherited one of £22 billion. This one's even bigger, and she made it. Let's face it, this woman could not run a bath. She doesn't actually know how to do anything when it comes to money. She doesn't know how to organise what can only be described as a day out in a brewery. She is hopeless, absolutely utterly hopeless. I don't think she lasts a year. Keir Starmer, meanwhile, is under fire this morning for all manner of things, including his idea of letting people out of prison early and trying to fix the crime that is invading all of our streets right now. The other big question, of course, is when are we going to run out of water? According to government ministers, including Steve Reid, the Environment Secretary, because of mass immigration, we're not going to have enough water to keep us going, so we could run out of it inside of 10 years. Now, I'm not one of those people that sends alarmist bells when you don't need to send them, but this is a pretty big problem in this country because we haven't built any reservoirs for literally decades. And why? Because we were in the European Union, and they said that they were environmentally unfriendly for some reason. I don't understand why that would be, but we'll be asking you that question. Also, we'll be talking about the criminals and the crooks moving into the waste business. Apparently, 7 billion is what we spend every year on getting rid of rubbish in this country, whether it's recycled, whether it's put in a landfill, whether it's burned, whether it's shipped off to China, wherever it's going. The crooks have taken over, and they're reckoning on making about £1 billion a year out of taking away your stuff and just dumping it somewhere else. That's what they're doing. So we want your stories on that, of course. 0344 499 1000. Also talking about, since we're in sort of summer holiday mode, drinking at airports. Here's a voice note from Pete.
Hi, Pete from Derby. I think that regarding drinking at airports, it should be treated exactly like when you're buying duty-free. You should have to scan your boarding pass. That way they can monitor how much people are drinking and actually put a stop to people getting absolutely wasted before a flight. It could be a way forward, you know, to stop all these problems. Have a great day, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why anybody would get that wasted before they get on a flight, you know. I mean, I've certainly been, shall we say, slightly the worse for wear having got off a long flight, but that's a different matter. But also, I don't get aggressive when I get drunk. I'm aggressive just generally. No, I don't. Honestly, it's not like that. 0344 499 1000. We've got loads of great messages coming in. Keep them coming. This, of course, is the home of common sense. You can't find it anywhere else. How about this from Marion? She says, Mike, I got back from Dubai last night. It puts this country to shame. I've been going there for the last 3 years, and the changes to the infrastructure, especially the airport, has been amazing. It makes this country appear like a third world country. Also, it was lout-free. I hope you enjoyed it. P.S. I will be going again next year. Yeah, I did say this yesterday. You know, there's no need for a sign at Dubai Airport where you have to say, please do not be abusive to our staff. We will take it very seriously. They don't have to put signs up in places like that, because if you are, you won't be seen very much around at all. You'll be taken to a dark room somewhere and pummeled with a rubber hose, which is fine as far as I'm concerned. Morning, Mike, says Maureen in Stamford. I live near this reservoir. It's a very popular beauty spot near where I live. Lots of sporting activities, great for cycling and walking. Surely more of these around the country would enhance local areas and provide much needed water. Well, you would think so. But, of course, if you ask the Labour government, they'd probably say, oh, no, we need that room for housing. We need to build more housing. But you haven't got enough water to supply the housing. Never mind, we'll think of something. But you haven't got enough sewage to deal with all the water that's going to be coming out of those houses. No, never mind, we'll think of something. But you haven't got any roads to go to those houses. Never mind, we'll think of something. Because the most important thing is not that the Chancellor knows what she's doing. The most important thing about the Chancellor is, of course, that she's a woman. Have a look.
It will also be the first budget delivered by a woman ever. That is a moment of pride. When Rachel Reeves stands up, she will be making history. And I can tell you, young women and girls across the country will be watching, they will look up, and they will notice.
Yeah, and they'll go, what idiot gave her the job, is what I think they'll be saying. James Price is here, former government advisor. James, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Just extraordinary to see that they keep trying to find ways to make new kinds of history. We'll have, the first Under-Secretary for Paperclips making a speech without notes next, all this sort of stuff. I mean, can't we move past this and start talking about the awful content of what that budget's going to be like?
Exactly. But the trouble is, whenever you see Keir Starmer with that rictus grin, you know that there's some bad news coming. When he goes, women and girls will be joyful of watching it. He did have the same face when he was announcing the theme park, which is apparently now going to be kiboshed by some travellers who are refusing to move out of the area which they want to develop. And then, of course, the most recent one, when he was in Lidl's, saying how excited people were about his new deal with the European Union, because he said they could go to Europe and get through the e-gates with much ease, and it won't be so difficult for them to go on holiday. And you're going, are you actually living in the real world? What on earth are you thinking?
It's quite extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, lawyers are supposed to be good at public speaking. That's what I always thought. You see Ron Paul of the Bailey and criminal barristers managing to convince juries that what their own eyes had shown them wasn't what they'd shown them. Starmer seems unable to pull off the same trick. I think we're all too wise now to politicians of any colour or creed who are only red, blue, whatever, light blue, or the rest, who will try and just do these sort of short sound bites. And I think it's not just about the kind of bad media management that we've seen of the sort of Alistair Campbell years or anything. I think that short little clips like that and little kind of cuts for social media have made it even worse. It stops politicians being able to actually think deeply and seriously and think about second-order consequences of what they're saying. It's all very well to go, right, now, Chancellor, you're going to go up on the telly and you're going to say, we're going to raise this tax and it's going to bring in X amount of money. And they go, OK. And they go exactly as you said, like a robot, and go, well, this will raise another £10 billion. But they never then stop to be able to think, okay, well, how will people react to that?
No.
Will people like Maureen, you just heard from there, move to Dubai, where they don't have to pay that tax and they take all of their wealth and they take all of their industry to some other country, which is what's happening. The politicians of today are totally incapable of thinking even semi-seriously, and it's showing in the parlous state of the country.
And there seems to be no strategising either. It's almost as though everything is done on a 24-hour cycle, and a sort of, even now with Starmer, I think it's even on a shorter cycle than that. It's almost a 12-hour cycle. We've actually started doing a little feature here called Lie of the Day. Because there is one every single day. Old Starmer, you'll put out a tweet usually around about 9 o'clock in the morning, which will be completely fallacious, completely and utterly untrue. And normally it will say something like, "We are securing the borders of our country," or "We are making our streets safer for women and girls," or "We are creating the chance for everybody to buy a house in this country." All of which turns out to be complete and utter rubbish. But it's almost as though, let's see how this one lands, and if they don't like that, well, we'll have another one in a couple of hours.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I suspect by the end of this Parliament, that feature will be kind of lie of the hour or something as they increasingly desperate.
Yes.
I think this is what happens when you elect politicians who've got no grounding in any kind of philosophy or ideology. Someone like Margaret Thatcher, who I obviously think was heaven on earth. And lots of people today will not think that, but they will at least acknowledge that. They'll say, well, at least she believed in something, and at least she went and acted on what she believed in. And I can't think of that many politicians in recent decades who really believed in stuff, who really sat down and read a lot of quite dull, quite dry, political philosophy and go, well, actually, I find that what John Locke and Thomas Hobbes and all these people from kind of British history we should be very proud of, who influenced the formation of governments around the world, they don't sit and read these things and think, well, how might these great ideas be useful for today?
Right.
They're just buffeted about by whatever their advisors have seen on Twitter this morning.
Yeah, and it's really quite depressing, isn't it, that now we suddenly find ourselves in a place where they're going, Steve Reed comes out and goes, we're going to run out of water. Why is that then? We've got too many people here. It's because of mass immigration. And you go, OK, and I know that we can't probably in all good conscience blame the Labour government for what happened 10 years before now, but we can certainly blame the system and blame the Tories for being just as bad at planning. They didn't apparently plan anything. The European Union told us we're not allowed to build reservoirs. I don't understand why that was in some way environmentally unfriendly.
Absolutely extraordinary, isn't it? Water everywhere and not a drop to drink. Was it Coleridge who said?
They won't have heard of the Ancient Mariner.
No, definitely not. Although we're stuck with the albatross around our neck in the form of the Prime Minister, I suppose. I think that these kinds of mad greeny policies that sound nice in the abstract are exactly as you say, Mike. You use the perfect word for this: the system's fault. This is the big apparatus that has grown up behind the scenes. Dominic Cummings talks about this a lot. Even Trump will talk about it and call it the deep state, and by which we don't mean spies and the people that work very hard to keep us safe, but all these kind of faceless apparatchiks who never have to face the light of day, never have to see scrutiny. When they make a mistake, it's not them who get blamed for it. Yeah. And the problem is that these people are like the person with the hammer. All they see is a nail. If you say, right, your policy is looking after the lesser spotted newts, then you go, okay, I'll look after the lesser spotted newts. And if that means that a reservoir might hurt one tiny little newt, well, some idiot has given me the power of veto and stamp a big veto on it. Politicians are supposed to be people that take the balance of everything that is required together. What's it going to be like for the economy? What's it going to be like for drinking water in this case, for goodness? And balance that with what it's going to be like for the environment and these other factors. When you try and take all these things in isolation and you give faceless civil servants behind the scenes, whether they're in London or in this case even in Brussels still, ridiculously, that you get these kind of stupid bad results because they don't have to worry about economic growth. They don't even have to worry about drinking water if it's not in their very specific job description. Yeah. And we get to the kind of farce we're seeing now.
Well, it's like I was saying, sort of slightly tongue-in-cheek at the start of this hour, let's build some more houses, but don't worry about the infrastructure, we'll just figure that out. The roads, they might get a bit busier, you know, we won't need to supply any more water. We won't need to build any more pipes. We won't need any infrastructure. We won't need to put a new doctor's surgery in, or a new school, or a new hospital. All of that will just sort of happen because the magic sort of, you know, free market will create it. I think that's what the Tories used to think. Labour, I don't seem to think, have a clue at all of how to build communities. They talk about communities a lot, but they don't know how to build them.
Well, the free market, by the way, would be able to do this if the government got out of their way. But what we've got is incredibly onerous planning restrictions, whether it's on houses, whether it's on infrastructure. And unfortunately, you know, the way that young people in particular, but actually people up to their 40s now, are being priced out of the housing market is turning people away from feeling they've got any stake in society whatsoever. Imagine what's going to happen when you say you can't actually get any clean drinking water or bathing water. It's going to be, you know, carnage on the streets. We realise that people have been priced out of all of these sorts of things because a couple of people like to keep their pretty view. I'm afraid we have to get proper houses built, proper infrastructure built, or not only are young people going to become communists, it turns out we're all going to die of starvation and drought and not being able to drink water.
But again, which again, I mean, you take another aspect of their policy at the moment, and that's their attack on farmers. You know, it don't seem to have worked out that if you continue to attack people who grow the food in this country, they will stop growing the food in this country, and we might actually have to import all the food, and then that won't be good either.
Right, and this is the bit that really gets me. I believe in the free market. I believe in the free trade and all these sort of wonderful, cuddly things that used to, until very recently, work very well. But the problem is that we've seen through COVID the weaknesses of some of this, and we see that the system likes to use free market examples when it doesn't require us having to actually do anything difficult in Britain. So what do I mean by that? Well, we say, well, we're free marketers, so it's going to be fine to import food. It's going to be fine to do that. Of course, then, as you said there, when we run out of food ourselves, that falls apart. But we don't do the smart, sensible bits of kind of free market capitalist thinking, which is letting businesses get on and run their own affairs, letting farmers get on and run things themselves. So we're stuck in the worst of both worlds. We have the bits of capitalism or I should say free marketeering that makes us more dependent on China and their anti-capitalist practices, but we don't do all the great stuff that capitalism could bring us in terms of making us rich and giving us enough surplus to be able to pay for schools and hospitals. We're in the worst of all possible worlds, and we need a better class of politicians to get us out of it before it's too late.
Yeah, because the people are starting to wake up, and I'm pleased to see that on the front page of the Times today that the public have lost interest and lost faith in the junior doctors, who apparently don't want to be called junior doctors anymore because they don't like the way it sounds. But they're planning yet another strike, and this time I'm really happy to say the public will not be supporting them. And I said this last year when they were threatening. I said to Wes Streeting, they will not, you will, if you go up against them, you will be supported, because the public are sick to death of these Marxist doctors trying to run everything into the ground.
Yeah, absolutely right. You said that they don't want to be called junior doctors. As my wife would say, someone called a ambulance for that. I broke my arm a few years ago and went into a hospital whilst there was some striking going on. And as I'm kind of limping through in pain, and you just hear, oh, Fidelia, go and get me another skinny latte, would you? Yeah. And I say I lost all possible support I could have had for them in that moment. Yeah. And they're just a terribly unsympathetic bunch, I think, because they go through their whole lives being told, oh, you're brilliant, oh, you're marvellous, oh, you're wonderful. And they realise, well, actually, maybe you actually should do some work in order to justify that.
Yes.
I do think that there is something we should be doing about pay for doctors who work hard and who don't strike, which I think is sort of breaking their Hippocratic oath, because we're seeing a lot of people now, British people, we pay to train up, then disappearing off to Australia to get paid more. And if the market therefore offers that, we should do something about it. But you know that the British Medical Association, which sounds very proper, but is basically just the trades union for these people, they campaign against lifting the cap that we have on the number of young people, young British people, who can train to become doctors. Right. There are more people, more kids, more 18-year-olds who want to train to become doctors than we allow to do that. They got to go off and do something else and ruin their dreams. But then we go, oh, actually, we haven't got enough doctors, so we import doctors from the third world, who are presumably they're also needed. And by the way, they have higher rates of malpractice and things like that. Again, just completely stupid, and we're shooting ourselves in the foot here.
And we allow it to continue because nobody knows how to fix it, which is the problem. James, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Let's not forget what Keir Starmer said about what Keir Starmer was going to do about the NHS earlier this year.
Everybody watching this who has used the NHS or relatives have know that it's broken. They know that it's broken. That is unforgivable, the state of our NHS. The last government broke the NHS.
Yeah, and this government's continuing to break it even further into many, many more pieces. It used to be just broken, now it's completely smashed, because you know how he likes to smash things. I'm going to smash the NHS, smash the snuggling guns, crush the vans, the fly-tipping vans, and smash and crush the mopeds and the scooters. Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Good morning, mate. Great show as usual. Read the water. Any chance that because I've paid 33% extra this year, I will be able to use a few drops of the stuff? Or is it that expensive that I can't go anywhere near it? Darren from Bradford, mate. Yeah. Have a great show.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Darren. You won't be able to use any water, despite how much you've paid them, because I'm afraid all that money is needed to go to the people who run the water company and the chief executive, of course, as well, who will no doubt give himself a bonus, even though there isn't any water. In fact, what we'll have here, a bit like hospitals. Hospitals, in the end, during COVID, would rather you didn't go into them. They basically had doctors who would rather you didn't go to see them. They had an NHS service that would really be much better off if there weren't any patients. You know, it's almost as though there are actually consultants who think like this, in the same way that water companies now would rather you didn't really use any of their water because it's quite inconvenient to have to remove the water from your premises, you know, the wastewater. It's all a bit messy and nasty and can't really handle it, so we just have to dump it in the river and see what happens, or jump it in the sea. But just, it'd be a lot better if you just paid a load of money and didn't use any water at all. Is that all right with you? 7:20.
TfL now have got nearly £500 million of debt, and that doesn't include the whole total London mayoral budget, which I think is something like about 15-16 billion.
Yeah,
I mean, we talk about 22 billion black hole, or so Keir Starmer keeps talking about, as is Rachel Thies. But when it comes to actually someone like you know, the number that's just for London, it's a monstrosity of a number, and yet. Guess what? The only ones that pay easy cash cows, guess what, is the motorist.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:22. I'm Mike Graham. Welcome to the home of common sense. We're here till 10 o'clock. Local boy says this. We have an old fella on the estate in Wrexham. He used to go around collecting rubbish with a bin bag and a grab stick. He was told it was not his job, but he carried on doing it anyway. They fined him eventually for leaving bin bags with mixed recyclables with his bin. I kid you not. That's extraordinary. I've actually seen a guy walking around where I live who's got a bag. He's got an orange high-vis vest. I assume he's employed by the council. And what he does is he picks up all the rubbish and he puts it in plastic bags, and then he piles it all on top of the actual public bins, like next to the bus stop. Which is all very well if there isn't any wind, because if there is wind, it blows down. And it's all very well if there weren't things called foxes, which can jump up and get the bin bags and just go through them. So it seems to be a complete and utter waste of time to me. He goes around collecting stuff, puts it in a bin bag, which then gets ripped apart either by some foxes, rats or seagulls. I mean, I don't want you to think I live in some hellhole. This is quite a nice part of London. You know, it just happens to be ravaged by local wildlife. What can you do? Anyway, let's talk to Harry Miller, the founder of Fair Cop, of course, a man who does a lot of good work in all sorts of different areas of this country. One of the good guys, it has to be said. Harry, very good morning to you.
Thanks for having me on, Mike. It's been a while.
It has been a while. I don't know what you've been doing. You've been quite busy. I keep seeing you doing other things, you see. That's what it is. I just assume you haven't got time for me. Let's talk about this new Liverpool development because, interestingly enough, we can't name him, obviously, because he still hasn't been charged, but everyone seems to know quite a lot about him now. He's a company director, father of three, comes from quite a nice part of Liverpool called West Derby. Everyone says, amazing, can't believe what happened. I mean, I said yesterday, I can't believe that the police sort of allowed a van into that street. That's the bit I don't get.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it seems as though that the driver, who clearly was drunk or high or in a rush or what have you, decided to tailgate an ambulance. Well, I don't know great deal that you can do about that, really. I think the interesting thing about this story, Mike, is that the police have released very early some basic details. I mean, if you think back to in the wake of the Southport attack, we were being fed the line that this was a Welsh choir boy from Cardiff who'd committed the atrocity. Well, that kind of nonsense has got to stop. And if the police, Merseyside police, have learnt their lessons from last summer, then great big tick. Because it's time that the police stopped treating the public with contempt. You can't get away with it anymore, Mike. Not in this digital age where everybody is a citizen journalist. You can't get away with half-truths and non-truths and straight-up lies because you're going to get found out. And once that happens, the trust between the police and the public breaks down. So, you know, hurrah for Merseyside police on this occasion. I thought that they dealt with the ongoing incident very well, and they dealt with the aftermath of the incident very well. So praise where praise is due, Mike.
Yes, well, sure. Until we know all the facts, though, we don't know whether that praise is justified, because it was put to me yesterday, what if it turns out that that description is not entirely as sold? I mean, it looks as though it probably is, and so we'll give them the benefit of the doubt up to now. But they've also put themselves in a bit of a bind now, because they'll have to do this every single time there's an incident, which means that when they don't want to give out the information, it will look even worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is entirely a problem of their own making. They've been masquerading the facts in order to fit a political ideology for far too long. This is their problem. They've got to solve it. What the British public need is they need as much information as fast as possible. And that information needs to be factual. Now, we understand that there are rules around contempt of court, certainly in the light of the Cliff Richard case years ago. The Supreme Court ruled that even a suspect has the right for a degree of privacy. Well, of course, we understand all that and we respect all that. What we do not respect, Mike, is when the police blow smoke up our jacksies. We don't appreciate that at all. And the bond of trust between the police and the public is broken at that point. So I am hoping, hope that it does turn out, in fact, to be a 53-year-old white British man who did this because he was, you know, momentarily insane. Because if in the worst case scenario it turns out to be much more sinister, then my goodness, I dread to think what consequences might be. And all we want, Mike, we want the police to be honest. We want the police not to treat us with contempt.
Exactly. Treat the public as grown-ups. But I'm sorry to say that already in London we've got a problem because the Metropolitan Police have obviously not followed that lead. You might have seen stories about an attack on some Jewish kids on Hampstead Tube Station just the other day, over the weekend. And the assailants who put one of the kids in hospital were said to be a group of men. That's the only description we've got. The police have not put out a description other than a group of men. Now, you and I could probably hazard a guess as to what sorts of groups of men are likely to beat up visibly Jewish children or teenagers. But, of course, we don't know for sure because nobody's told us. And that tells me that the police, as a general rule, still haven't learned anything.
Well, that's absolutely right. The police are committed to protecting certain groups and throwing other groups to the dogs. So we know this has been happening for years. This being sort of flimsy and laissez-faire with the truth, it just doesn't cut it. And quite frankly, it's dangerous. I remember a few years ago calling out Derbyshire police when a young girl went missing. Now, because this young girl happened to identify as a boy, police said that the public should look out for a young boy.
Right.
Well, that's simply dangerous. That's putting out misinformation, and people are going to stay missing when the police put out this completely crazy misinformation because they are committed to serving a political ideology.
Yeah.
Police have got to stop that. They need to start trusting the public, because you know what? As British people, it is not our instinct to go out and riot. We're quite sensible in Britain. Just because somebody names that it's an Islamist attacker or an anti-Semite, we don't then rush out to the nearest mosque and go and beat somebody up in retribution. That's not how we behave in this country, and the police need to recognise this and start trusting the public, because that's the only way, as far as I can see, that the police are going to gain the trust of the public again.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's just talk about another story that came across the desk in the last few days. This is PC Rachel Comato and PC Stephen Smith. You'll know these were two people, police officers, who were cleared of assault yesterday, but these were the couple who basically attacked Donald Burgess, who was a one-legged 92-year-old person who was a bit upset, was holding a knife in his care home, and they basically fired a taser at him and a couple of other bits and pieces in the Park Beck residential care home in St Leonards-on-Sea. It turns out they probably will lose their job, so it's not right to say that they haven't faced any punishment at all. But would it have been right to find them guilty of assault, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. You're faced with a one-legged amputee who's in his 90s and he's holding a butter knife.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no justification at all, as far as I can see, for one, pepper spraying him, shouting at him, and then tasering him. But what on earth? I watched the video, Mike, as I was waiting to come on your show, and I was utterly speechless. That is straight up assault. It's elder abuse. The police had no justification whatsoever for deploying that amount of force.
It seems to me, and I said this the other day, if you're a police officer and you can't disarm an amputee 92-year-old holding, as you say, a butter knife while he's sitting down and not moving, you shouldn't really be a police officer, should you?
No, you shouldn't be a police officer. And that's one of the problems that we have, Mike, is that we have a whole bunch of recruits at the moment who are not fit to be police officers. Recruitment in this country is terrible. And of course, we're losing all of our best policemen because they refuse to toe the politically correct line. And so what they do is they go off on sick, or they get suspended, or they simply leave. And that leaves us with a bunch of police officers who, frankly, are not fit to do the job. Now, anybody with any common sense would have dealt with that situation in that care home with that gentleman with that butter knife in a very, very different way. It would not have involved pepper spraying the man, tasering the man. It's absolutely outrageous. And I'm as you know, I support police officers all the time. I support police officers when they're dragged through the courts and when they're dragged through malicious professional investigations. But on this occasion, there is simply no excuse for what we witnessed there. I don't know what they were doing. I don't know what they thought they were doing. They were just simply being absolute out-of-control bullies, and the faster they are out of uniform, the better.
Yeah. One final one for you. Sadiq Khan yesterday came out and said that he thought cannabis should be decriminalised, if not in the country, certainly in London. He's been slapped very firmly on the wrist by David Sidgwick, Dorset's Police and Crime Commissioner, who actually says that it shouldn't only not be decriminalised, that it should be put on a par with crack cocaine and heroin.
I'm not entirely sure about that, but Sadiq Khan can't help himself, can he? He has to stick his nose into absolutely everything, and in doing so, he undermines the police. And as far as I can see, that is his primary job. He's baiting Sir Mark Rowley. He's baiting police officers. He's being a politician with great power who is interfering with the rule of law. And I don't appreciate it. Sir Mark doesn't appreciate it. Coppers don't appreciate it. The PCC doesn't appreciate it. He should just keep his mouth shut.
Somebody described him to me yesterday as the Gary Lineker of the Labour Party.
I think that's a very, very good, very good description. Actually, he just doesn't. He has no boundaries, does he? He has no limits. He sticks his nose into everything, and he's so superciliously correct about everything. Yeah, I mean, we just need to ignore him, Mike. He's not a man of common sense. He's not a man of the people. He's not a man for the police force, and he's not a man for the rule of law. He's another one who panders to a political ideology over and above everything else. So just pooey to him.
Yeah, absolutely. If only we could, that would be great. Great to see you. Harry Miller, founder of Fair Cop there. See you soon again, Harry. Thanks very much indeed. Keith says this: I hope Sir Keith Davos will be held personally accountable when the legions of violent criminals are released amongst us to commit further horrors. Maybe Sir Keith could defend himself in court. Well, it'd be the first time he'd been in court for a while, because as we were told some weeks ago, when he was head of the CPS, he was more about appointing lawyers to act for him in court than he was actually about performing in a court, which is why he's so useless at performing. Let's get a voice note from Chris.
Good morning, Mike. It's Chris in Northampton here. Thankfully, my phone doesn't go on silent, so my alarm wakes me early just so I can enjoy your show. Loved you and Emma this morning talking about the Richter smiles of two-tier Keir and Rachel from Accounts. But it's not a new thing. I'm old enough to remember old Gordon Brown when he was tried to be made photo-friendly, and they made him do a speech and he looked like his smile had been put on with a staple gun. Talking about the interweb, if I remember.
Yeah, we'll try and find that clip. He used to have that terrible kind of attempted smile, didn't he, Gordon Brown? He would kind of go, for no apparent reason. Instead of where Starmer's kind of developed it more, he's going and he says, speaks while he's smiling. But Gordon Brown used to sort of speak and then smile. He'd say, and I will say this only once, it is very, very important for the country. You know, such strange Labour thing. I don't know what's going on with their facial expressions. Anyway, coming up, we're going to talk to LaDonna Harvey. I need some explaining to be done, because apparently a court in America has blocked Donald Trump from imposing sweeping global tariffs on imports. But he's already done it. So I'm going to have to ask LaDonna what it all means, because I don't understand. 7:35.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:36. I'm Mike Graham. Mike, did you have any hosepipe bans when you were in Dubai? They haven't had much rain lately. No, funnily enough, there were no hosepipe bans. It was a very nice swimming pool, though, where they actually cooled the water because it was so hot there. The sea was like soup, so they actually have to cool the water. Sharon in Staffordshire says, this country is an absolute total mess. It's dirty everywhere you go. I feel embarrassed that I am British. Well, I don't blame you. People are really, really upset about the way things are going in this country at the moment. Over in America, of course, a slightly different kettle of fish is going on. Some people think it's great, other people are not so sure. But overnight, a court in the United States has blocked Donald Trump from imposing sweeping global tariffs on imports. They basically said the president exceeded his authority. But LaDonna Harvey's here from Arizona, the KTAR in Phoenix, to be precise, because I need LaDonna for you to explain what's going on here. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Good morning to you. I mean, this has already all happened, hasn't it? So what's the court wishing to do?
Well, I'm not really sure what the purpose of the court's decision is. So the tariffs were imposed. They were done. Yeah. We have done trade deals. I don't know what this means moving forward, say, with the EU, where a trade deal hasn't been done, right, but it is under negotiation. I would imagine that this judge wants Congress to approve these things, which under normal circumstances they would. Right. But here we are. And so I'm not really sure what this means. It's a 3-judge panel. One was appointed by Trump, one was appointed by Obama, and one was appointed by Reagan. Okay. I think that he's going to appeal, the Trump administration is going to appeal, and then we'll have to see where it goes next.
Right. But it seems to me it's sort of closing the door after the horse has bolted, isn't it? I mean, it's all very well saying he exceeded his authority, but he's now done deals with Canada, he's done deals with Mexico, he's done deals with the UK, certainly he's done deals with other countries around the world. He's in talks with China, and I think some of those tariffs have been suspended. So, I mean, it seems as though here's a judge and a court trying to interfere in his kind of free market economics.
Well, to a degree, the way that Trump was able to impose these tariffs is he said that they were emergency powers,
right.
And there are emergency powers that would allow for him to do that. I think this judgment is a little too little, a little too late. As you mentioned, the horse is out, the barn has burned. All that's left is the door.
Yeah, absolutely right. He's also done another thing, which presumably they might find to be entirely illegal and exceeding his authority, which is banning and halting all international student visas.
Right. Yes, he has been very displeased at the student demonstrations, and I'm going to air quote that, demonstrations. What they really were takeovers of portions of universities, complaining about the Palestinians and complaining about what Israel is doing and saying, the United States is complicit. And you can say that all you want, but you're really not supposed to light buildings on fire and turn over trash cans and be jerks about it.
Right.
You're supposed to hold signs and protest. He would like to see all foreign students go through a vetting process where they even take a look at your social media and decide, if you are taking a stance that is in opposition to something that the American government is doing, then you shouldn't be able to say anything about it, or you should not be in this country availing yourself of a college education. If we think that you're going to protest or generally be a pain in our butts.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the definition of a college student, is they're a pain in the butt.
Yes. I mean, funny enough, I think Caroline Leavitt put it best, though, when she was asked about this, when they were deporting that guy who supposedly had a green card, but he was one of the more active sort of activists, if you like. I think he was at Columbia, I can't remember. And they kicked him out of the country, even though he had a green card, and even though I think he was either married to or was living with an American citizen. She said, if you come to this country and you abuse the right of the freedoms that we grant you by becoming, I think, slightly more than a nuisance, I suppose he was. I mean, he was more than a pain in the butt. He wasn't just, standing around singing, we shall overcome. He was actually like breaking into buildings and all sorts of stuff. She said, we reserve the right to kick you out. And I think that's fair enough. But they've also taken another step further, because Marco Rubio said yesterday that they might stop British officials coming to the United States if they've been complicit in preventing free speech, which I think was an interesting one.
Yeah, it does seem diametrically opposed to the other thing that we just did, which is tell students that they don't have free speech. I think that the free speech with the Trump administration, it really does highly depend on who you are and what you're saying.
Right.
And I don't know why you would want to stop a British official from coming over, or an official from any country. Nobody cares what anybody else thinks outside of what's going on in America if you're an American. So I don't know what the purpose to that is. I understand the student visa clampdown. I understand, at least the thought process behind it. Keeping officials out of the country, I think, is maybe going a step too far.
Possibly so. Let's have a look at a little clip of Donald Trump from yesterday, where he was labelled a taco by a reporter.
Mr. President, Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats, and that's why markets are higher this week. What's your response to that?
I kick out?
Chicken out.
Oh, and then I chicken out. I've never heard that. You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I said down to 100 and then down to another number? And I said you have to open up your whole country, and because I gave the European Union a 50% tax tariff, and they called up and they said, please, let's meet right now. Please, let's meet right now. But don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question. Go ahead. To me, that's the nastiest question.
He doesn't like reporters much, does he, Donald Trump?
No, he does not.
That's a nasty question.
I get the biggest kick out of him, and I did during the first administration too, in that he's a little thin-skinned. You know, he does not like being called on the carpet for anything.
Right.
And you know, a very easy answer to that would have been, no, I'm not. Moving on.
Right. Yeah, I haven't heard that. I feel I'm more of a burrito, perhaps.
Yes.
But,
really,
you know,
because I was thinking I was a salad today. I don't know.
But I think again, he so much is performative. I mean, I think his supporters love it when he gives some of it back to the reporters, because they're all painted as these kind of woke, left-wing, Trump-hating, you know, ridiculous journalists who don't know anything. And as he says, that's why nobody's watching your channel anymore and all that. And I think that Donald Trump's voting base loves it.
Oh, they absolutely do. I mean, you know, I was talking to Kevin O'Sullivan whenever you were off.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like, look, Trump supporters love him no matter what he does.
Yeah.
And Trump haters hate him no matter what he does.
Yeah.
And that is just not going to change. And there's no incentive for him to change his approach to talking to the media or talking to foreign governments, because the people who voted for him voted for this.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah, absolutely right. And by the way, Keir Starmer is just as thin-skinned, and nobody gives him a hard time for it here because we just expect it, I suppose. Here he is talking about Harvard.
Harvard has been a disaster. They've taken $5 billion plus. $5 billion. Nobody knew that they were making this kind. If we didn't do this, we would have never found this out, Pam. They're taking $5 billion. And I'd rather see that money go to trade schools. And by the way, they're totally anti-Semitic at Harvard, as you know, and some other colleges, too, in all fairness to them. And it's been exposed, very exposed.
I mean, he's not wrong, is he, about some of these? I mean, Harvard, I certainly knew Yale in New Haven had a lot of their fundraising capabilities taken away from them because people were like, we're not giving you any more money. A lot of the big donors have said, we're not going to give you any more money until you fix this anti-Semitism problem.
Well, and it is a problem. It's a problem on American school campuses, and I think it's a problem on school campuses around the world, quite frankly. But, you know, some of the dollars that he's talking about that go to Harvard go to medical research. You know, you hate to see those kinds of dollars disappear from a program that might be doing the world some good. By the same token, a lot of people did not realize that there was a lot of government money going into Harvard, always thinking, oh, you know, it's Harvard. It's an exclusive school because only donors pay for Harvard. And that's just not true.
Right.
So I think that that universities, while they are going to lose in court, the Trump administration, by this I mean, they are going to lose in court. That money will be going back to Harvard. The point has been made, and they are going to lose in the court of public opinion, which right now is not thrilled with the Harvards of the world.
No, quite. Absolutely right. Good to see you. Donna Harvey, thank you very much indeed for explaining all of that, because we needed it. It looks as though the horse has bolted. It looks as though there isn't much point to this particular court ruling on the tariffs, but we'll see whether it affects anything, you know, coming up in the future. And whether it affects anything with Britain, I'm unsure about. I don't think it will. 0344 499 1000. You might remember in the first hour we showed you a picture of the wokest roundabout in Britain. There's a little video which accompanies it as well. We've got this from Carl in Bury, who says, if you think that woke roundabout is complicated, check out this Cyclops junction in Bury. We've got a picture, I think we should show you. There you go. Goodness gracious me. It's a traffic lights and gives way for cyclists. Never seen anyone use it yet, and yet it costs £1 million. I mean, who is coming up with this rubbish? There's painted red bits, there's white bits, there's poles, there's bollards, there's lights, and there's nobody on it, because you wouldn't know what you're supposed to do. It looks like a game of checkers or something. Very weird, very strange. Shall we have another look at the actual video of the wokest roundabout in the UK? This is in Hemel Hempstead, and they have to tell you how to use it. We'll have it in a second for you. At the moment, we're looking at roundabout. Here we go.
When driving, be prepared to give way to people walking and riding bikes. attentive. And watch out for people walking and cycling as you exit.
Yeah, okay then. You'd be so frustrated by the time you get to the other side of this roundabout. You'd be, you know, I don't know what you'd be doing. But it's mad, isn't it? And why do they have that ridiculous music accompanying everything? Just ridiculous, bonkers. Coming up, though, we're going to find out what's going on over in Gaza, because Mohammed Sinwar has been eliminated. He is, of course, yet another leader in the Hamas movement. While all of the aid is going into the Gaza now, it turns out that the UN is still not very happy about it. People are still raging about what Israel is doing. We'll find out what the latest is coming up next.
TfL now have got nearly £500 million of debt, and that doesn't include the whole total London mayoral budget, which I think is something like about 15-16 billion.
Yeah,
I mean, we talk about 22 billion black hole, or so Keir Starmer keeps talking about, as is Rachel Thies. But when it comes to actually someone like you know, the number that's just for London, it's a monstrosity of a number, and yet. Guess what? The only ones that pay easy cash cows, guess what, is the motorist.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:50. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Ian from Lancashire says, I think the NHS is not broken. It is a victim of its own success. People are living longer. That's not been dealt with. People want to live in the UK because of the NHS. New knees, hips, hearts, lungs and stents. Successive governments have not kept up. Well, I think, Ian, you can't say all of those things without saying also there's an awful lot more people living here. It's not just that people are living longer, it's that we've got about 10 million more people living in this country than we had approximately 10 years ago, which means that the NHS is under an awful lot more pressure. And also, people are getting sicker. They might be living longer, but they're still getting sicker while they live longer. They're not necessarily living longer, healthier lives. They're living longer lives, but they need more treatment as a result of that. Regarding the water problems, there's Margaret in Yorkshire. We often see on TV an ad for water aid donations for other countries. Will we be doing an ad for donations for this country to help with the water problem? Yeah, well, it might well be that that's how it turns out. You'll have to walk 10 miles to get the nearest well so that you can get some water in a bucket and walk all the way back with it. You know, it'll be start looking like that in Yorkshire pretty soon. You never know. Let's talk to Yotam Confino, a Middle East correspondent and author. He's in just north of Tel Aviv for us right now on Talk. Yotam, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Thanks very much for joining us. Gaza very much in the news over the last week or so with, complaints from the United Nations about Israel blockading aid going in. Israel saying that the UN are the ones doing the blockading. It seems as though there is some aid now getting into Gaza. We've also had it confirmed that Mohammed Sinwar has now been eliminated, according to Benjamin Netanyahu. How would you characterise the way things are at the moment in terms of the sort of context of the conflict since October 23?
Look, I think we're in a dire situation, really, because Israel and Hamas continue to refuse to compromise to reach a ceasefire.
Yeah.
Now, today we just had, I wouldn't call it a breakthrough, really, but the Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, Trump's envoy, has just said that there's a new proposal on the table, a 60-day ceasefire, the release of 9 hostages and 9 dead hostages as well, and that would of course lead to more negotiations to reach a permanent ceasefire. Now, whether Israel is ready for this or not, it's hard to say, really, because Israel doesn't want a complete ceasefire. It doesn't want to allow Hamas to be in Gaza after the ceasefire. But Hamas, after having let's assume that Mohammed Sinwar has been killed. We don't know, actually. Just because Netanyahu says so doesn't mean that he's actually been killed, because the IDF and Hamas have not confirmed it. But let's assume that he's been killed. I would say that that's a big removal of an obstacle to reaching a ceasefire, because Sinwar was not ready to agree to anything, really, when it comes to compromises.
No. And I mean, that has always been the problem, hasn't it? Ever since the dawn of that awful morning on October the 7th in 2023, that there has been no compromise. And from Israel's point of view, they say they don't see why they should have one as long as the hostages are there. I mean, one question I would have, I mean, there are believed to be, a couple of dozen dead hostages. Where are those dead hostages being held, or where are they being kept? Are they? I mean, it's a strange question, I know, but just on a kind of a practical point, where are they?
It's a good question. A lot of people are thinking the exact same thing as you are. Where are they? We don't really know. I believe that some of them have been buried because they know that it's going to take a long time before there'll be a deal and before they have to release the bodies. But it's just macabre in every possible way. We have 20 hostages who are believed to be alive. That's been downgraded from 24 just a couple of months ago. So 20 hostages are believed to be held in dungeons underneath the ground in Gaza. And we know from some of the hostages who've been released in the latest ceasefire that some of them are badly injured, they are being tortured, they're starved, and they haven't seen daylight in a long, long time. So I would say, and it's really sad to say this, but the most dire humanitarian situation in Gaza right now is the situation that revolves around the hostages, because they don't receive an iota of the humanitarian aid that enters Gaza. And they're also in danger of being killed by the Israeli military or by Hamas, for that matter.
Right. Exactly right. And what of the aid packages going in now? I mean, I watched some footage last night of what looked like a warehouse being sort of taken over, if you like, by ordinary civilians from Gaza, and it looks as though Hamas were coming in and trying to remove them from the facility to say that they wanted to control the release of whatever the goods and whatever the food stuffs were. What's been happening there?
Look, Hamas is desperate now. They are calling on Palestinians in Gaza not to receive any of the aid that comes in because it's controlled by Israel and the United States. So they would rather have their population starve.
Yeah.
And for those who attempt to loot, they're being executed by Hamas. Hamas has executed several Palestinians. We don't hear about it because the world don't care when Palestinians kill Palestinians. But that's the fact. And yes, there was a warehouse that was looted. I'm not sure who it belonged to, if it was the UN or some say it was Hamas. I'm waiting for some more details on this. What we do know is that yesterday Hamas attempted to portray themselves as the new NGO that's currently distributing aid in Gaza. They sent out messages supposedly on behalf of this NGO saying that they had to halt all of the distribution because there was chaos. 47 people were wounded by gunshot. And then the organization came out a few hours later and said, we didn't send this message. But by then, the story had already been spread to the entire world. Everyone was talking about it.
Right.
It's just really dangerous, the amount of misinformation that comes out and how fast the media take it as truth and just runs with it.
And that is a real problem, isn't it? Because, I mean, there's a story in one of the magazines here this week about how Israel lost Europe, effectively. And I don't think it's true to say that Israel has lost Europe, but it's been surprising, has it not? Not least with the statement that came out from Keir Starmer and France and Canada last week, which was praised by Hamas, asking Israel to stop their invasion of Gaza. There is a sense that some political leaders in the West have not been as supportive of Israel as they should have been.
Absolutely. Look, you can rightfully criticize Israel for many, many things. Have there been committed war crimes in Gaza? Most likely. Is blocking aid unethical? Absolutely. But in the bigger scheme of things, there's one actor in all of this that's solely responsible for the situation we're seeing, and whose crimes are on a level that you cannot even compare to what Israel is doing.
Yeah.
And yet 90% of the focus from NGOs, from countries around the world, from politicians, it's on Israel. Very few NGOs and politicians try to put pressure on Qatar, which is the main funder of Hamas. Qatar that has leverage over Hamas. It's Israel that has to stop, Israel that has to withdraw, that has to compromise, and Hamas is expected to just do whatever they want, really.
Right. Yeah, it's quite shocking how that's all happened. Yotam, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Yotam Confino, Middle East correspondent and author, just north of Tel Aviv for us there this morning with the latest from Gaza. Let's get a voice note from Dave on how Brazil dealt with their environmental issues.
Morning, Mike. Great show. Apparently, this is environmental subjects. When they was doing the old Brazil World Cup, they discovered a new species of tarantula. And anyway, they discovered it and just stamped on it. Nothing to see here. Carry on building a new stadium. Anyway, great show, Dave from Southend.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't want any tarantulas running around the World Cup, do you? It's bad for business. Absolutely right. Having zebra crossings too close to roundabouts, says Vern in Southampton, is dangerous, but the added green bicycle lane is complete madness. The Highway Code states that cyclists must dismount and walk on zebra crossings. This green cycle lane just means they don't have to dismount and will speed through, making it a nightmare for drivers. Well, this magic roundabout, which is not magic, is a woke roundabout from Hemel Hempstead. It's so confusing that they've had to issue a 3-minute video to show people how to get around it. And I mean, if you watch it there, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And the guy who's in the car is going to be so frustrated by the time he's got from one side to the other that he's going to be a bundle of wits. He's going to have to calm down. He's going to park the car somewhere and get out and sort of ponder life for a bit. Otherwise, you know, he could be a danger to other drivers. Absolutely incredible. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk to Peter Hitchens. He's here. I'm sure he'll have something to say about what Sadiq Khan wanted yesterday, which was to decriminalise marijuana and decriminalise cannabis. I think he'll tell us that it's pretty much already happened. Plus, we'll take loads more of your calls. This is Morning Glory. Back after the news. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humphrey Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar. Hello, and lady. Unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's Plank of the Week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me Meghan Markle, because it's Meghan Sussex.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Peter Hitchens coming up in this hour. We'll be asking him about Sadiq Khan, who yesterday came out and said it would be a great idea if they could decriminalise marijuana and cannabis in this country and very possibly in London, if nothing else. Of course, fortunately for the rest of us, Sadiq Khan doesn't actually have any jurisdiction over that kind of policy in the great city of London, the capital city of this country. But he's been roundly rebuked by the Chief of Dorset Police, who says not only should we not decriminalise it, we should put it on a par with crack cocaine and heroin because it is that dangerous to society. Of course, many people yesterday were making the case that, of course, it's much more reliable than alcohol. If you set up heroin junkie injecting centres, they would be much less harmful than alcohol, much less harmful than pubs. Everything, if they're in the drug world, is much less harmful than alcohol. That's what those advocates say. I don't think I buy that. I don't buy it at all in any way, shape or form. So much drug use now is going on in this country. It's almost impossible not to link it to almost every single crime that happens in this country. Certainly the Liverpool driver of that people carrier that rammed into the public as they were taking part in a parade celebrating Liverpool's win of the Premier League is said to have been under the influence of drugs. We don't know yet whether that's true, but certainly we know an awful lot more about him than we did yesterday, according to the Daily Mail this morning. He's a father of 3, he's a businessman, he's a company director, he's thought to be a family man who lives in a part of Liverpool called West Derby. Everybody who knows him there is saying it's a terrible shock and a terrible surprise to find that he was in the midst of anything like this. So that, of course, is a very unusual scenario. We'll bring you details on all of that. Charges still not brought, but he was arrested. The 53-year-old white British man, as he was described, was arrested on charges of suspected murder. Attempted murder, I should say. We'll bring you more on that. We're talking about Rachel Reeves this morning as well. The terrible state of the economy. She's now apparently created a £35 billion black hole, which pretty much dwarfs the £22 billion black hole that she says she inherited. And the other big story that we're talking about this morning is that we're apparently running out of water. According to the government, Steve Reed, the Environment Secretary, says because of mass immigration, we could run out of water in 10 years' time. Well, build some bleeding reservoirs then, for heaven's sake, and stop pretending that by building them it's somehow bad for the economy and bad for the environment. Let's get a voice note from Charles.
Good morning, Mike. Great show as usual. Charles here from Edinburgh. I'm just a bit confused about this two-tier Keir. He says that the Ukraine has been invaded illegally by Russia. But what he seems to forget is the UK now has been invaded illegally by immigrants, and he doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. All he wants is his face on the TV, and he only says what he thinks that you want to hear. He's an absolute joke.
Well, he says he wants to say the things that we want to hear, but he doesn't seem to know what we want to hear because he keeps getting that wrong. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. One from Karen who says, morning Mike, superb show, read the roundabout. It looks like an accident waiting to happen. I wonder how many rear shunts will happen or have happened. And M says, Brian in Glasgow says, Mike, read the roundabout in Hemel Hempstead. If a driver has to give way to pedestrians and cyclists, a motorist could end up stopping on the zebra crossing to give way to cyclists. That doesn't seem very safe. No, I don't think it is. I don't know who comes up with this mad stuff, but it doesn't work for me. We'll talk to Peter Hitchens about it in a moment. We were talking earlier about that Richter smile that Keir Starmer always kind of puts on his face when he's doing something that he thinks is great. He did it when he announced Rachel Reeves was going to be the first woman Chancellor. It's going to be amazing. And then he did it when he announced the new theme park. I never thought I'd be opening a new theme park from Universal, which, by the way, has been kiboshed by some travellers who are apparently not moving from the site. And then only just last week when he went to Lidl's to tell everyone how exciting it was that he'd done a new deal with the EU, and he did that thing again where he went, the e-gates, yes. Everybody's very excited about going on holiday and not having to wait in a big queue. Well, we found the origin of the first Gordon Brown Richter smile, and here he is during a number 10 video. This is from 2009.
Going around the country, I've been struck by the comments that are made about young people when I meet them, about what jobs they want to do when they grow up. And I meet large numbers of people who want to be doctors and nurses, many who want to be teachers and firemen and ambulancemen, many who want to be in the caring services. And when I ask them why they want to do what they plan to do, they say they want to make a difference.
Yeah, and what they were saying later was, why have you crashed the economy? And why have you given Sir Fred, what's his face, a knighthood from the Bank of Scotland, the Royal Bank of Scotland, I should say. Peter Hitchens is here. You might remember Gordon Brown's rather odd way of smiling. He used to sort of speak and then smile in between the words.
I do remember it. It always made me feel a bit sorry for him. But it reminded me of the description, I think, of Robert Peel, by someone in his era, that his smile was like the sun glinting on a coffin plate.
Very true.
Gordon has actually some redeeming capacities. Though he won't even speak to me, but his smiling is probably something he should be advised by anybody who has anything to do with it, not to do in public.
There is a kind of terrible aspect to politics, isn't there, though, that somebody always tells these politicians, you know, you don't look right, so just try and look a bit more friendly. And it doesn't work for Starmer at all.
Well, no, it doesn't, and it doesn't work for many of them. But the trouble is, it does work for some, and the advisors who advise it know perfectly well that these irrelevant little touches can in fact help to keep governments in office which don't deserve to be there. That's why they do it. It does actually work on people who long for their political leaders to be human, and long for some sign of it, are actually taken in by it because they want to be.
Yes, I suppose that's true. People are being less and less taken in by the Starmer administration now, I fear. It looks as though there's not very much they've got right, and what they think they wanted to get right, they're now beginning to reverse on the grounds that they don't think people like it.
As virtually the sole person who spent several weeks before the last election saying, look, it's not going to be a good idea to have the Starmer government, and being derided and howled down for saying it, I do feel that I've rather vindicated in that.
Yes, I don't think there's any question that you've been totally vindicated.
No, as always, but I'm always totally vindicated long after it's too late to be any use.
Yes, I mean, that is the trouble.
I want to be vindicated while I'm saying it, not a year later or 10 years later.
Well, I'm having a slight taste of that this morning, because I'm looking at the front page of the Times and looking at how Wes Streeting is now saying to the junior doctors, excuse me, who apparently don't want to be called junior doctors anymore, that he's not going to be able to give them any more money, even though when he gave them 22% last year, I did predict that they're more than likely to come back for some more this year, as indeed they have.
Well, sure, but the problem with doctors is a part of the problem of the whole country. We can't really afford to be the sort of country we claim to be. If you train doctors to a reasonably high standard, then they become marketable, particularly throughout the English-speaking world. They were junior doctors. They then became, resident doctors? Or
they want to be called that now, yeah.
If we don't pay them more, then they will become Australian doctors, is the problem. And that is the difficulty we face, that we don't train enough doctors, and once we have trained them, they are, I think, reasonably free to travel the world, and they can probably earn more elsewhere. And it's all part of this country refusing to face up to its real state of affairs. We spend billions on bombing Ukraine, and then we wonder why we can't afford to either train or pay doctors in the health service. You have to choose eventually whether you want to live in this fantasy world of Britain as a great power dropping bombs all over the place. Yes. Or whether we're a modest and intelligent country run by modest and intelligent people, which spends its money wisely on the things that it needs. Personally, I would rather spend money on junior doctors or whatever they're called than on bombing Ukraine. And not just because I think bombing Ukraine is cataclysmically stupid.
Yes, well, I mean, apart from that, though, there's plenty of other things that we waste money on.
Many, yes.
Even more profligate waste.
By the way, have you heard that the plumbing has now broken down on one of our famous new aircraft carriers?
Oh, yes, that's down in Portsmouth.
They have to go ashore to have a shower.
Yeah. Well, when I put that
difficult in mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, when I put that to Chris Parry, the former naval commander, the former NATO commander, he said, "Oh yeah, that was a regular thing when we were at sea in all sorts of situations. That basically the ships were never very good." But I mean, you come from a naval family, so you probably know more than I do.
Well, it wasn't. They were never luxury cruisers, but I think they could manage to get the plumbing to work.
Yeah, well, we can't look forward to the plumbing working because we're being warned by the government now that because of our inability to build any reservoirs for the last several decades, thanks to the EU regulations, we might run out of water.
Well, I have a different attitude towards this, which I've felt for some time. In the north of the country and in Scotland, we have enormous amounts of water. And there isn't ever any problem. What this country seems to me to need is some sort of water grid, where water can be transferred in large quantities from the north to the south during the periods of southern drought, and then transferred back when we no longer need it. I think it wouldn't actually cost all that much money to do. You can use canals and rivers as well as pipelines to transfer the water. It just needs someone to have the systematic idea to do it. I think there are vague plans under consideration, and bits of it have I think perhaps been attempted. But I think in a country like this where there's a huge amount of water, where there are no people, and not so much water where there are lots of people, is the obvious solution. Reservoirs are difficult. It's all very well saying make them and drown large parts of the country, but the people living where the drowning takes place don't feel quite the same way, and it's always going to be difficult, particularly again in the crowded southeast, to find places which you can do that to. I really do think we should consider a national water grid as an alternative solution. Again, it would be something that an intelligently run country would long ago tackle.
Yeah. Should we not also be considering desalination plants? And I was just in the Middle East, which is obviously where they have that.
As far as I know, it's still very expensive.
Yeah, it is.
And I think it's given that we have the water as it were in the wet end of the country that we don't use, and which is a long way from the people. Pipelines and other connectors to bring it down when it's necessary. Again, it would cost some money and would require some planning, and undoubtedly would inconvenience some of the people along the route. But it would, I think, be a more permanent, workable, and better solution than trying. I mean, how many reservoirs would you have to actually create in the south of England now to meet the needs which we haven't been paying attention to?
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean...
An awful lot.
I suppose an awful lot, but a couple would be better than none, I guess, and I really don't like it when they tell us that, despite the fact that they've just put our water bills up by 35%, they'd rather you didn't actually use any water, please.
No, but that's part of the whole catastrophe of the privatisation of the water industry, which was basically a device for siphoning money out of the water industry into as far as I can tell, into foreign banks, and did no good, and led to an awful lot of neglect, which we now face. And again, an intelligent country, when it realises that it's been neglecting its public assets, does something about it and fixes them. But again, the fantasy of being a great world power with a seat on the UN Security Council and a strategic nuclear deterrent keeps us from considering what it is we could do if we were more modest. I've said it before, this country has serious delusions of grandeur. If it were a human being, it would be sectioned.
Yeah, I think that's probably about the best sort of assertion about this country that I've heard for a while. Meanwhile, you got Sadiq Khan yesterday talking about cannabis. I'd like to get your view on this. Have a look at what he said.
Well, I think we need to have an honest, open conversation about the evidence in relation to the issue of cannabis and whether our laws in the UK, whether our experience of the health consequences in relation to crime, consequences in the community, what the future is. And hear from the experts, that's one thing, but seeing it for yourself is very different. And here...
Yes, the evidence, indeed. I'm sure you'd have some evidence for him, wouldn't you?
Well, I do. One of the key things in the report, 300 pages, I don't claim to have read it all, but it mentions, as it were in passing, that King's College in London has embarked on what is probably the first major study of the effects of marijuana on the brain. And it's only just really begun. They've been finding the thousands of people they need to do the survey, and it hasn't reported yet. One of the key things about marijuana, leaving aside all the other arguments which we can have, is the growing correlation between the use of this drug and severe mental illness, particularly among the young, because as you will know, as anybody with their eyes to see and a nose to smell is aware, marijuana is on pretty much open sale, particularly in secondary schools, though it can also, I regret to say, now be found in primary schools as well. And the children are the most vulnerable in this, in that their brains are unformed. The brain isn't fully formed until the mid or late 20s. And a child with an unformed brain taking this drug is in terrible danger. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it certainly happens to some. And you will get calls, I think, pretty certainly after I've spoken, from parents and grandparents saying that their children and grandchildren have undergone disastrous personality changes and irreversible mental illness following their use of marijuana as children. And this is very, very common. It's so irresponsible for people such as Sadiq Khan to talk about softening the law. Now, what he also doesn't seem to understand that the decriminalisation which he seeks has happened de facto. I would say that by about 1995, particularly in London and then later outside it, marijuana had become a decriminalised drug in terms of possession. The police had more or less ceased to bother with prosecuting possession. And they do it sometimes because it's used for holding charge. It's very easy to prove, and therefore if you want to hold somebody while you collect evidence or something else, then a marijuana charge is a good way of doing it. But that's really the only use they make of it now. The actual prosecution of people for marijuana possession, which carries a 5-year prison term and an unlimited fine, is almost unknown. I don't think that anybody has gone to prison on a first offence of marijuana possession or a second offence of marijuana possession for something in the region of 30 or 40 years. It's not that decriminalisation has happened. So what is the purpose of these reports? There's usually about one a year, and they all point in the same direction. They all say we should weaken the law on marijuana, when everybody around the country is saying, well, my neighbours are smoking it all the time. My garden stinks of it. I have to shut my windows in the evening and keep the smell out. You walk through London in the summer, it does. Much of it actually stinks of marijuana, of skunk in particular. People smoke it openly in parks and in the street, and they can walk past the police doing it and nothing, whatever will happen to them. So why is he saying this? It's generally part of lowering our defences. Now, people say, you can't possibly enforce the law. Actually, you can. First of all, we did in this country very effectively before 1965. And they do very effectively also in two extremely civilized and advanced countries, that's to say Japan and South Korea, where marijuana possession is still a serious crime and where the whole marijuana culture is viewed with contempt. So it is possible to do, and I'll tell you one reason why it ought to be done. Because of this problem of children. If someone's in a school and they come under peer pressure, as they do, to start taking drugs, what defences do they have? What can their parents say to them that will persuade them that they shouldn't do this? They're not going to believe, all young people believe they're immortal. They're not going to believe it when they're told it could make them mentally ill for life. But if it's credible that on a second offence of marijuana possession, and it should be a second offence, first offence should obviously be some sort of real caution. If on a second offence you went to prison and you received a criminal record which meant you could never travel to the United States or many other countries and would have many careers and jobs closed to you, that would be a real counter-argument to the peer pressure in schools, which people could use to protect themselves. It is a protection for children to have an enforced law against marijuana. And that actually is one of the most powerful reasons to do it. Protect children from this pressure. They really do need it, because those who give in and take it, in far too many cases, end up with their lives ruined. And it's not just their lives. It's the lives of their families who see somebody they used to know and love turn into somebody wholly different, who will never be able to hold a decent job and who's lost much of their character. It's catastrophic when it comes into your home. And I know people to whom this has happened, and I can't say strongly enough, there has to be some defence against it. And a properly enforced law against possession, which doesn't need any legislation, it's already there, is actually the way to do it. And the police should be told, this is what you must do. It may make you unpopular. Then there's the argument that Sadiq Khan and others come up with, that the stop and search is used principally against black people. Well, that may be true. I'm not going to deny it. I don't have figures to hand. But the answer to it is not to stop doing stop and search. It's to stop and search lots of white people. And as I say, go and stop and search people outside the gates of Eton College if you want.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me. Let's have some equal opportunity stop and search. The argument is not that too many black people have stopped and searched, but too few white rich people have stopped and searched.
Yes,
I'd love to see people being stopped and searched for marijuana in Kensington and Chelsea, for instance.
Yeah, well, you don't even have to stop and search them. You just have to follow them.
Well, you don't. No, but
follow the
I'm just
smell.
saying.
You know, it's like you don't have to. It's not a secret what they're doing. But listen, we've got to
an argument against enforcing the law. It's an argument for enforcing it properly.
Yes, quite. Peter, good to talk to you as ever. We've got to run. Peter Hitchens, columnist at the Mail on Sunday. Let's get a voice note from Judith on farmers. Oh, sorry, we haven't got that one yet. Instead, I'll do this. Chris says, morning, Mike. The doctor's banner saying fair pay saves lives. A bit of a joke. It should read, going on strike, loses lives. Morning, Mike, says Sharon. Lady from Hemel Hempstead here. A silly roundabout is not what we need. I can think of 100 other things the money could be more wisely spent on. And Max says this, Mike, why are the MPs on holiday this week? Talk about skiving while Rome burns. Get those lazy buggers back to work. Well, I mean, you do wonder, don't you? It's not a great time to be away when the world is kind of coming to a grinding halt. Certainly in this country it is. Here's Judith on farmers.
Good morning, it's Judy from Altos, West Yorkshire. Regarding the farmers, last October, Starmer and some MPs had a meeting with Bill Gates. Now, Bill Gates is busy in America buying up all the farmland. For what purpose? Not, I don't know. Perhaps he fancies himself as a farmer. Well, after this meeting with Keir Starmer and other MPs, 3 days later, they announced that they were going to tax the farmers on their land, meaning they'll have to sell land to pay the taxes. Is this a coincidence? I don't know. I know a reporter tried to get the minutes of this meeting and she's been stonewalled and I've heard nothing since. So strange, isn't it? Thank you.
Judith, very strange indeed. Thousands of family farms could go bust thanks to a new raid being plotted by Labour, according to a piece in the Mail today, because it says that Rachel Reeves is so basically broke that she's scrambling to find 30 billion quid after leaving herself little fiscal headroom. So she's going to try basically to get rid of subsidies which are worth about 5 billion, which have been paid to farmers up until this moment. She may be taking them away. And just on the subject of Bill Gates, apparently he does own approximately 242,000 acres of farmland with assets totalling more than £690 million. That, I have to say, is quite a lot of farmland. Apparently it's nearly the size of Hong Kong. That's a hell of a big farm, isn't it? Amazing. I don't know what he's doing with it. Nobody does. Nobody's quite sure what Keir Starmer's doing with it either. Or with Bill Gates, or Bill E. Gates, as he likes to call him now. 8:24.
TfL now have got nearly £500 million.
We have things like the Diamond Diversity Report, which I used to look at when I wasn't allowed to speak or wasn't allowed to be on the BBC, which will show you that minorities are overrepresented, at least on TV, by about 2.5 times. So we have the stats to show if you are a white man, you actually are being prejudiced against. I was told by somebody very high up at one of the main channels, very, very high up, that is, unfortunately we can't have someone who looks like Louis Theroux. And they said, look, we'll take the ideas, but we need somebody who is a minority to be on the screen.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 26 minutes past 8. Morning, Mike. I've been wondering if Sadiq Khan wanted to decriminalise cannabis to free up the police to assault pensioners and raid their bookcases. What are we becoming, says Paul from Rochester. And this one from somebody who doesn't give a name. You've got it all wrong about water. We don't need new reservoirs. Here in Salisbury, we take the houses to the water. We build on the water, meadows, floodplains. It's brilliant. Householders will be able to source water from their bedrooms. Yeah, I see what you mean. Some of the housing that's been built in the last sort of 20 or 30 years has been put in really, really bad places, hasn't it? Because what they've done is they've completely forgotten that the reason why people didn't build on floodplains was before they flooded. And of course, when you do build on floodplains, unfortunately, that tends to be the result of bad planning, and it ends up with people getting flooded houses. John says this, Clevedon by the sea used to have parking facing the sea so people could take in the views of the pier, etc. Some half-wit redesigned the parking area so basically you were looking at the road or the car in front. After many months of complaining, they've said, we've listened to the locals and are putting it back to how it was. Why didn't they listen to the locals before changing it in the first place? Millions of pounds wasted. Yeah, well, again, so much money is wasted in public sector spending in this country that you never know what they're going to waste it on next. We're going to talk about Keir Starmer decriminalising dope with Jack Elsom in a moment. It's a big story on page 10, big column this morning by Mercy Muroki. But first, Jack, a very good morning to you. I just want to mention this amazing front page you've got on the serial killer Rose West, the last days of Rose West. A fascinating tale. I was old enough to cover the trial and be around when Rose West and Fred West were arrested. She's now a woman of 71, rarely leaves her jail wing, increasingly frail and isolated. And extra interest, I suppose, in this because of this new Netflix series that's coming up.
Well, morning, Mike. You're totally right. On the front page of The Sun today and a big spread on the inside pages, my colleague Julia Atherley has absolutely incredible insight and detail into the life that Rose West, that awful serial killer, currently lives. She's spoken to various people who have been in and out of the prison, who have watched Rose West up close, and the details are remarkable, to the fact that she eats 2 cans of tomato soup for breakfast every day and spends most of her life knitting and watching various nature programs on the TV. It actually sounds quite cushy for someone who's only one of 4 women to be given whole life orders, and obviously I think murdered 10 people along with her husband, Fred, back in the 70s and 80s. Yeah. Absolutely ghastly woman, but it does seem at the moment that she's very frail indeed.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. A great story, front page of The Sun and a spread inside as well. Let's talk about Mercy's piece in page 10. Mayor of London Sadiq Khan, yesterday we were just talking about it with Peter Hitchens, has backed a proposal. She calls it a dopey proposal for his own drugs commission to decriminalise cannabis in London. I mean, luckily he doesn't actually have the power to make it happen, and he's already been roundly criticised by several law enforcement leaders who have said, absolutely not. In fact, if anything, they should make it a more dangerously classed drug.
Yeah, and this story seems to come around every year, usually with Sadiq Khan, the one banging the drum for it, probably because he wants to distract from all the other problems going on in London, not least sky-high crime on his watch. In The Sun today, like you said, Mercy Muroki puts the case against decriminalising drugs. One, because she says, what sort of message would this send to the public? Essentially that drugs are okay. And she cites various studies showing that actually they are not, whether it's in psychosis or car-related accidents or obviously gateways onto harder stuff. But I think that Mark Rowley probably makes the best point, which she mentions in her piece, which is that decriminalising drugs wouldn't stop any kind of gang warfare. You still wouldn't be able to buy them in a shop, and therefore what it would do is just expand the demand for drugs, and mean that more people end up killing themselves on the street in the name of drug supply. So a pretty dangerous proposal all round. I would say I think the public are pretty genuinely split on this issue, and polling shows that it's a pretty big divide. But I think a lot of people, not just in London, because we seem to sort of put this in the London bubble where probably there is more use of marijuana than the rest of the country, would be a bit uncomfortable with people smoking spliffs on the side of the street.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, many people, and I'm one of them, walking around London, you'd say, well, has it been decriminalised already? Because, as Peter Hitchens says, he's fairly certain that you wouldn't find anyone who's been sent to prison for sort of what you might call personal possession of the drug in the last 20, 30 years.
He's totally right. And Peter Hitchens, to his credit, has been going on about this for a long time now. And he's completely right in the sense that we have decriminalised cannabis in all but name. If you smoke a spliff on the side of the road, you will never be arrested or even charged by officers, despite the fact that it remains an illegal activity. And so it does seem the police have just totally given up with this. No ministerial direction whatsoever. It just seems that over the past 30 years, we've stopped enforcing our drugs laws. And Peter Hitchens is completely right about that. And as Mercy says in the piece today, it's almost like we've just surrendered, and decriminalising would just be giving up totally. There are many people in this country that want to see us actually enforce our drug laws as they are written in statute. not as they are practiced at the moment by police who seem to just sort of turn a blind eye to lots of these things.
No, of course. And Sadiq Khan is a bit of a thorn in the side of Labour at the moment, isn't it? Because he doesn't always agree with Keir Starmer. He takes positions on things, and he was described to me yesterday as the sort of Gary Lineker of the Labour Party, which I thought was quite good.
Yeah, totally. I mean, he's pretty opposed to much of what the leadership does on various things. He takes a much harder line on Israel, Gaza. He's obviously a complete Europhile, even probably more so than Keir Starmer, who likes to sometimes parade as a born again Brexiteer, but it rules out things like rejoining the single market, whereas Sadiq Khan is very, very vocal in saying that he wants to rejoin the customs union, single market, essentially rejoin the EU in all but name. And so, yes, he's very much sort of the annoying stepbrother of the Labour Party, who is constantly undermining the Labour leadership. Like you said, a thorn in the side of them, and he's obviously got a mandate to do so, or he thinks he does anyway. And so he's not going to shut up for a very long time. And I could say that there are people in Downing Street that get pretty annoyed with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Another great story in The Sun this morning by Martina Bett, your colleague, political correspondent. Drought of order. This story from the government that we may run out of water in 10 years' time because we've got so much mass immigration that we haven't got enough to go around.
Absolutely extraordinary story. And I think for the first time in a long time, the government have actually admitted that rapid population growth, as they put it, which is mass immigration because births and deaths have essentially cancelled each other out for the past few years, whereas we've been importing a huge amount of migrants, has led to an incredible strain on public services, not least the water supply. And it's got so bad that Steve Reed, the Environment Secretary, is having to essentially seize control of the planning process to force through these 2 new reservoirs. We haven't had a reservoir built in this country in about 30 years. And in that time, about 9 million people have been added to the population. And as the Sun leader column says today, many people in the pro-immigration lobby for years have been saying that immigration is good for public services. Well, this goes to show that actually, and even Labour ministers are now waking up to the fact that it has put enormous strain on much of the infrastructure, the key infrastructure, which we rely on in this country.
Yeah, absolutely right. Great to talk to you, Jack. Thanks very much indeed. Chief Political Correspondent at The Sun. Mercy Muroki there on page 10, writing about the situation with Sadiq Khan and why he's a dope for trying to make dope actually decriminalised, because nobody in their right mind would want to see that happening. His argument for doing it, of course, is that it will improve relations between the police and various ethnic minority communities. Well, I'd say that's pretty unlikely, to be honest. The police have done everything they can to kibosh their relationship with what you might call the white, I was going to say majority of the people in London, but actually there's no longer a white majority in London because it's white British people who now make up something like 39% of London. But there's no point in kowtowing to the criminal element, regardless of what colour they are. There's plenty of white people smoking dope, and there's plenty of brown people smoking dope, there's plenty of black people smoking dope, and there's plenty of people with, I don't know, rainbow-painted faces smoking dope. Doesn't really matter. The fact is they're smoking dope, and nobody's doing anything about it. 8:35, this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:36. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. Gary says, Mike, who would have thought if in less than a generation you increase your population by around 16%, you might run into problems with your water supply and with the safe disposal of sewage? It's a good thing to say. Sean from Grimsby, how can an African village get water for £3 a month? Ours costs about 100 quid and we're running out, yet we're surrounded by it. I reckon we're being mugged off. That's a very good point, actually, Sean. Why does it cost so much money, and why don't we have any? Morning, Mike, says Nan in Wales. We need a UK Doge as quickly as possible. It's getting ridiculous and dangerous. I should say one of the things that we did see overnight is that Elon Musk and his Doge episode and his working for the government in the United States of America has come to an end, perfectly amicably, by the way. There will be those that will say, oh, Elon Musk's given up working for Trump. No, he was always only going to do it for a little while. Samantha says, Mike, my dad just turned the TV to BBC Breakfast and they have 3 police officers on. One who was wrestling with a 21-year-old man who had a knife, who had been given an award for bravery. Funny how the BBC has not mentioned a single word about the 92-year-old one-legged man in a wheelchair being pepper sprayed and tasered. Dad has decided not to watch BBC anymore and he's going to stick with talk. Quite right, Samantha. Very well said. And congratulations to your dad for knowing perspicacity when he sees it. By the way, just as you want to see there up there on the screen there, the migrant tracker telling us 36,567 young migrants illegally have come to this country. Most of them young men, very few of them women, and certainly very few of them children. Since Starmer became Prime Minister, 36,567. No wonder we're running out of water. We're also running out of hotels and, single occupancy homes, or whatever it is, multiple occupancy homes. That's what we're running out of. Let's talk to Kirk Clugston now, though, the CEO of Skip Space, because a little exclusive we've got today here at Talk is about the the crime wave that is taking over this country. It's not drugs, it's not alcohol, it's not smuggling cigarettes, it's not even smuggling people. It's getting rid of your waste. Apparently a £7 billion business, the waste business is in this country, and $1 billion of it, we reckon, is being siphoned off by criminal elements who are basically purporting to take your rubbish away and then dumping it, just as if fly tipping isn't illegal. Let's find out what's going on. Kirk, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to talk to you, Kirk. You provide skips, obviously legally, and then take those skips away for people. Most people will see a skip outside a house in their street at some point or other, probably in the next month or so. Where do all these skips go, and where do you take them?
Well, I just need to correct you there. I don't provide skips. The name come from an idea that I had to sell the space you could fill in skips. And that's an app that we're producing now. The app that we've got at the moment is to help councils eradicate fly tipping. I talked to you about it a couple of months ago.
Yes, I remember that, yeah.
But the problem we've got is the police are not stopping, and the Environment Agency are not stopping enough big lorries to find out what they're carrying.
Right.
And if they did that, it's like stop and search. It's the same with knife crime. If you stop and search people, then you find knives. It's the same with the big lorries, the grab lorries. They're just going around and dumping whatever they want whenever they want. Right. And when we spoke last time, I was told by the Environment Agency the problem costs 1.3 billion a year. Right. Now it seems to have gone up to 7 billion a year, so I'm not sure what's happened there.
Right. Yeah, I'm under the impression that the 7 billion figure is what the rubbish business is worth, rather than what the actual criminal element of it is. But the criminal element of it clearly is increasing, because criminals are very good at finding ways of making money.
Yeah, and they do. And as I said last time, the government and the councils have shot themselves in the foot by not allowing people to go to the waste sites and dump their rubbish and pay cash,
right,
or credit card. You have to be a trade waste carrier. So people look for other ways of dumping their rubbish, which is why we've come up with a solution.
Yeah.
But no one wants to know about it. The councils don't want to know about it. So we're banging our head against the wall. We have been for 2 years. We know we've got a solution. We've spoke to councils. They love it. They don't take it any further,
but they can't,
because a lot of them are lazy.
Yeah.
Well, they don't want to make it happen. They'd rather just clear up the mess rather than stopping the mess being dropped in the first place.
Yeah.
And to me and to people like me, that seems to be utter madness. It's wrong, and there is a solution, but they just don't seem to want to bother to clean it up, and it's a shame, really, because you can see on your screen there the mess that the fly tippers leave.
Yeah.
It's wrong.
Yeah, and fly tipping on that kind of scale can't be done invisibly, can it? They can't be just sneaking off in the middle of the night and doing it. They must be doing it in broad daylight.
Yeah, and they're doing it with impunity. They don't care. Because there is no deterrent. It's not like years ago when the police were everywhere in their cars and that. You hardly see them now. So people think, right, okay, we just dump it here. And you have people that set up farms and things like that to deliberately allow these guys to come in and dump their rubbish, which is what obviously the big figures are coming from. It's, you know, there's massive money in it, and it's a shame that the council we'll just clean it up and we'll try and catch them after the fact. We've got to do something to stop it beforehand. And I know some councils are working with the Environment Agency and they're using drones, and some are stopping big lorries. But the thing is, it's not enough. And I'm hoping now that Reform have taken 10 councils and they seem to be doing a Doge style thing that they might get on top of it a bit and prove that something can be done. I wish they'd talk to me. Because
have you tried talking to them about it?
Yeah, you can't get through to anyone, Mike. I've tried emailing, phoning, writing, everything. I've been doing it for 2 years and no one wants to know. But Reform are the people that I want to talk to, really, because we can stop it and we can show that it'll work. And if it works for one council, they can roll it out throughout the country, and hopefully we'll get that 1.3 billion figure down to maybe 10 million or something. Who knows? But we can save money. I'm talking to the Taxpayers Alliance on Monday to see if they can help push our project.
Well, we can certainly push you in the direction of a couple of Reform MPs and maybe a couple of councillors as well to see if they can help out.
That'd be great.
But what about it's a lot of this commercial waste then, rather than private waste, if you like?
Yeah, the big stuff is as I said, there's farmers that are setting up areas that land can be used to drop the big waste on. But it's easy to find the people that are doing it, because they're not known companies. So there'll be people that lorries and massive vans are not sign written, and they dump with impunity. As I said, it's a real shame, but something could be done. Stop and search, tracking of vehicles, and all sorts of things can be done to help stop this. But as I say, they don't seem to want to do it as much as they should be able to do it.
No, they really should. Kurt, good to talk to you again. Thanks very much indeed. Kurt Clugston there with his view on what should be going on inside of local councils. But like he says, as much as they say they want to change things, they don't actually do it. But maybe with the onset of Reform, that will happen. A lot of you got things to say about the marijuana situation. This from Sue says, I knew a lad who started smoking cannabis at 12 years old. By the time he was 17, he'd been sectioned twice. At 18, he was sectioned again and diagnosed with schizophrenia. That's from Sue in Lee. Michelle says, I've known very productive people that use weed. Then again, I've known people it makes angry and addicted. And Mike in Erith says, I worked in the oil and gas industry, and most companies have a zero tolerance policy for drugs, as do many companies. They carry out random drug testing. If cannabis is made legal, then the drug will be smoked more openly there by putting people's jobs at risk. Yeah, I think that's something that people haven't really thought about. If you make something legal, a lot more people will do it. And that, surely, is going to be bad news for anyone from the NHS all the way down to the Criminal Prosecution Service. Let's talk to Stella in Swindon, who's got something to say about the crime problem in this country. Stella.
Good morning, Mike.
Morning. What can you tell me?
I came across an old newspaper cutting I'd kept, and it's how a local community bobby managed to single-handedly disarm a chap running riot with a shotgun in a small country town. All he had was his truncheon.
Really? So he just did it without any kind of tasering or anything like that? Didn't have to throw a metal bar at him or anything like that?
No, nothing like that. And I don't think, because it was 1995, I don't think they had all the fancy body armour that they've got now.
No, they didn't. They just had regular shirts and jackets, didn't they?
Yeah, and I knew him, and he was a very unassuming chap who just got on with his job, well liked by everybody on his beat, and confronted with that, he just went ahead and took the action which was needed.
Yes, exactly right. You'd think, as I said earlier to somebody, if you can't disarm a one-legged pensioner who's 92 years old, who's sitting down waving a butter knife at you, you really shouldn't be in the police, should you?
No, you shouldn't. And I think the lady who rang in yesterday, who worked in a care home, she said she can't imagine how the police ever got involved or agreed to get involved in the first place.
No, exactly. Because probably the care home staff could have dealt with it themselves. Stella, it's a very good point. Thank you very much indeed. Stella says back in the 90s, the police actually acted like police. They could actually take people down. No doubt the health and safety crowd would now say, oh, but you can't be doing that. You know, something might go wrong. And then what would happen? We might get sued. Morning Mike, says Steve, loads of money spent on roundabouts and other projects makes me wonder if it's a deliberate attempt to go bankrupt. As the council have their council tax increase restrictions of 5% lifted, they can then impose 20 to 30% council tax rises. I mean, it does seem mad, doesn't it, to spend that kind of money on such a pointless activity as a multicoloured, multi-entrance and exit, you know, dotted white line roundabout that nobody can understand unless they've watched a 3-minute video. We might have to play it again in a minute. Here's a voice note from Mark on cannabis.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire. I think Sadiq Khan's onto something here with this legalisation of cannabis. Sadiq can see into the future that British farmers are under threat and having problems, so maybe they can farm cannabis. They can even move on from that and farm poppies, and we can make heroin. We've got enough people from Afghanistan here that we can literally turn into Afghanistan, become one of the major heroin centres of the world. It's fantastic. We can all live in caves and everything. Sadiq's seen the future. It's brilliant.
Yeah, the Taliban next. And next, of course, you can also get a lot of aid from various different countries around the world, and you can just become a drug-producing nation. Maybe that's what I mean by growth. That's the growth we're looking for. That's just like growth. We're looking for a Labour lie of the day. Pretty soon, Keir Starmer will put out his morning tweet, and that will probably suffice as the lie of the day. But we'll keep our eyes open. If you spotted anything, by all means, send it in to us, because we'd like to do it as a regular topic. Labour's lie of the day. It's 8:48.
They'd rather be around there waving rainbow flags and Palestinian flags and joining in and than catching real criminals. That poor old guy.
I know what they're doing. They're doing it by the book. Give us the knife. If you don't give us the knives, we will have to taser you. He's 92. He's got one leg.
Ridiculous.
It's just...
I think they need striking off, to be honest.
Well, they are going to come before a disciplinary board at the police where they'll be tried.
The poor man, and he's dead now. That's terrible.
It really is.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8 to 50, 10 minutes to 9. Julie Hartley-Greer will be here, of course, in just over an hour's time to let us know what's coming up on her show from 10 until 1. We're on the lookout for Labour's lie of the day. It turns out that Keir Starmer is going to be addressing the nation. He's going to be speaking at around about 10:30 this morning about tax cuts, about benefit cuts, about the whole disability thing. Last night, as we've shown you in some exclusive pictures here today, there's already been a demonstration in his own constituency of St Pancras. Somebody called 38 Degrees have put up, projected a message to Keir Starmer not to be cruel. There you can see it there. Not to be cruel and not to actually make victims of the disabled in this country. Tax the super rich instead is what it says. You know, it's not necessarily an agreed statement that I would make, but certainly people are so angry in this country with everything that Keir Starmer's doing. I'm going to put this out as his lie of the day today, because this is his new tweet, only put out just in the last hour. Liz Truss's fantasy economics crashed the economy. My government was elected to fix the mess, is what he says. Now Nigel Farage wants to repeat her mistake. They're really worried about reform, aren't they? And you can't trust him with your job, your mortgage, your pension, your bills, or your future. It's almost as though he's talking about himself, isn't it? You couldn't trust Keir Starmer with your job, or your mortgage, or your pension, or your bills, or your future. He's taxing your pension, he's putting your bills up, he's making your job more expensive for your employer, and your mortgage is also going up because interest rates are going to be going up because inflation is going up. So that would be my Labour lie of the day. Thanks very much indeed, Sakir. Let's talk to Jane Deville-Armand, who's chair of the British Obesity Society. A big story in The Sun this morning about fat jabs. Apparently, warnings have come in over potentially catastrophic side effects with frightening impacts on your bones. An awful lot of people have been taking these fat jabs. Some people under the proviso of having a doctor recommend them, but many other people buying them on the internet, not being absolutely sure of where they're coming from. And it turns out that many people who have taken them might actually have been doing the wrong thing. Jane, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, these fat jabs really have taken the nation by storm, haven't they? I mean, there's all sorts of different brand names for them, you know, Wegovia and all the rest of it. And the injections have been hailed as a game changer by lots of people who think, you know, we're better to have a nation of thin people than a nation of fat people. But I've always been very wary, as you can probably see, of taking them.
Well, to be honest, I mean, I appreciate that people who lose rapid amounts of weight without eating the correct vitamins and proteins and minerals are going to end up with osteoporosis, because obviously, you know, you need all these things. You need protein, and you need calcium, and you need vitamin D to keep your bones healthy. And what happens with these drugs is that it enhances your satiety. So basically, people just don't feel hungry. So they tend to not eat the right foods and not eat nourishing foods.
Right.
And, you know, I'm not going to blame it strictly on the drug, because I think it's the actual weight loss and the fact that people aren't eating nutritious foods. And, you know, there's lots of apps around, and I think even if you get your drugs through the correct channels, you'll be told to make sure you have, you know, vitamin D and foods rich in proteins and obviously lots of calcium, and you'll be advised to do that. But obviously lots of people are getting these drugs off the internet. They don't follow any like protocol. They're really excited about losing vast amounts of weight very quickly. And yeah, it can be harmful not eating, you know, good quality foods.
Yeah. No, I've spoken to people who've taken them, and I mean, a lot of people who you can sort of visibly see have lost quite a lot of weight didn't need to lose that much weight, it seems to me. And many people have acquired these drugs, obviously, you know, either privately or certainly not through the NHS, let's put it that way. And they all say to me exactly what you've just said, that you kind of lose your appetite for anything joyful. You don't enjoy a drink, you don't really enjoy your food, you don't really enjoy all the things, the sort of Epicurean delights of life that you would have otherwise quite liked. And instead you just become this kind of husk who doesn't really have an appetite for anything, which I don't fancy is a way forward. And also I've spoken to doctors about it who say that if you don't do quite a healthy amount of exercise with these weight loss jabs, you actually lose a lot of muscle as well.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's really important. I mean, that's the great thing about like having lots of protein, because if you don't have protein, obviously your muscles kind of waste away, and that's exactly what happens. Not only are they losing fat, but they're losing muscle. And you're absolutely right. You know, we've got this obsession now of everyone being stick thin and thinking that that's healthy. And you know, the typical person for osteoporosis is someone who's like skinny and Caucasian, and you know, carrying a bit of weight isn't necessarily bad for you. It's obviously when people carry excessive amounts of weight that it's bad. But I think you're right. I think I'm told, and you know, this isn't I'm not saying that these drugs aren't absolutely great for people who need them, but you know, they do remove most of your jaw. You know, apparently they you know, your pleasure hormone seems to be affected, and you don't get any joy out of anything. And you know, at the end of the day, life, everything's a balance, isn't it? You know, I mean, of course we know that excessive amounts of rubbish food, drinking alcohol, you know, all of that is bad for you. We still need to have some pleasures in life, and I think it's about a balance, making sure that the majority of the time you're eating healthily, and then when you go and have a blowout, you don't feel guilty about it. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. Jane, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Jane Deville-Armand, very sensible woman from the British Obesity Society. You know, if you want to go on these drugs, you've got to be careful that you know what you're doing, and you're doing it under doctor's supervision, and doctors are actually in agreement that you should be doing it. Let's talk to Cheryl, who's in Hull, because she's got a story for us about fly tipping. Cheryl, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
What have you got for us, Cheryl?
Okay, you were talking about clearing up streets.
Yes.
Somebody that you were in contact with.
Yeah.
On earlier about trying to get rid of people who were fly tipping.
Yes, illegally, yeah.
And you thought a good idea was to get the councils involved.
Yeah.
But local councillor, Conservative local council was fined. I thought it was £300, but I've just been advised it was £400.
£400, yeah.
For fly tipping himself.
Right.
And that is
really?
a Conservative councillor.
Wow. And do you know what he did? Do you remember what the story was in terms of what he got caught doing?
Well, basically dumping all his rubbish.
Yeah. Just on a street or something.
The back street, yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, when I say the council should be involved, what I mean is that the council should make life simpler for people who want to, you know, take their waste to a dump, who want to do it legally, because one of the problems is the council are making it more difficult for people to do it legally, so that's why they're doing it illegally.
Well, yeah, but the councillor himself, the Conservative councillor, ought to be helping that process.
Well, he certainly shouldn't be fly tipping, that's for sure.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
I mean, you know, if we manage to, I mean, I dare say we could probably find an awful lot of councillors up and down the country who do things that they shouldn't do. But thank you for letting us know. Cheryl there in Hull, they're saying that there was a Tory councillor issued with a £400 fixed penalty notice for fly tipping in 2021. Back in Hull. I mean, it's quite a long time ago, to be fair. But, you know, councillors shouldn't be fly tipping. It goes without saying. You know, it shouldn't be a job description. If you want to join us as a councillor, please don't fly tip. You might as well say, please don't murder anyone either. If you're trained for a role in the armed forces, says the woo-woo, which costs the taxpayer a lot of money, you're expected to sign on for a reasonable number of years as a sort of payback. This should be the same for any doctor or nurse trained in the UK. They would then have their university fees wiped at the end of that time. I think it's been suggested before. In fact, I think I've even suggested it. If you're going to train as a doctor, you should have to work in the NHS for a period of time, whether it's 10 years or 15 years, in order for us to recoup the training cost before you decide to shoot off and go and work somewhere else. Paul in Fife says, why do we never hear opposition questions at PMQs asking the Prime Minister whether he supports Mayor Khan's insane ULEZ charges, and if he does not support them, then as Prime Minister he surely has the authority over Khan to have these charges removed. I've never heard Starmer being challenged about the odious Sadiq Khan, which leaves you wondering, is Starmer afraid of the London Mayor? I don't think he's afraid of him. He's afraid of committing himself on an awful lot of things. I think I have heard people ask him questions about Sadiq Khan. We'll see if we can find something on that for you and sort of restore your faith in decent journalism in this country, because there isn't much of it, it has to be said. Coming up in the next hour, Kevin Hollingworth joins us, Marco Longhi as well, former Tory MP, now Reform. This is Talk.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to you?
Thank you very much. Am I
Supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 9. The sun is up. It's not a great day out there, but I think it's stopped raining. So even though we've had the brightest spring on record since records began, apparently, it's going to be a very nice summer, we are told. It'll never get quite as hot, though, as it was in Dubai, or at least I don't think so. 45 it was last Saturday, which was rather stifling, has to be said. The only thing for it was to go and sit in a nice air-conditioned restaurant and have some very nice food, drink a few glasses of rather nice wine, it has to be said. Keir Starmer is making a speech coming up around about 10:30 this morning. He's going to be addressing the problem of tax rises, he's going to be addressing the problem of benefit cuts, and he's going to be addressing the problems of Rachel Reeves and the £35 billion black hole that she seems to have created ever since she's been in. Never mind the £22 billion black hole that he said and she said that they inherited. That's been debunked by the Office for Budget Responsibility. Don't worry, though, they've now created a black hole of their own. Why not? Because they've got nothing left in the tank. They've literally spent all the money. They gave 22 billion, I should say, 23 million, sorry, to the NHS doctors last summer. The NHS doctors have now come back for more. They're going to have to give billions and billions and billions of pounds away when they, in fact, decide to continue with their net zero commitments. They're going to have to give billions and billions and billions away when they start giving back some of the winter fuel allowance money, which they've now U-turned on. They're also going to have to pay an awful lot more money out for more benefits as we go forward into the next 2 or 3 years. Meanwhile, Sadiq Khan wants to somehow decriminalise cannabis. Here's what Sandra has to say about that.
Hi Mike, it's Sandra from Essex. What level of intelligence is required to consider talking about decriminalising cannabis when a man has been arrested on drug driving and ploughing and potentially injuring many people seriously? What kind of intelligence do you need?
It's a very good question, Sandra. Thank you very much for asking it. B in Wales says, my policing in this country all went wrong when college degree policing came in. My son was an officer with the British Transport Police and he didn't go to college. His old sergeant said it's all down to common sense. Get rid of police college, start calling it a force again instead of a bleeding service. You might get some sense back. Well, absolutely right. We've got lots to talk about. Kevin Hollingbrake is here, Shadow Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. Marco Long is going to join us as well, spokesman for Reform UK. Keir Starmer's just put out another anti-Nigel Farage tweet because he's so frightened of reform, he doesn't know what to say. We're calling it Lie of the Day because Keir Starmer says you can't trust Farage about the future or about your job or about your pension or about your bills. Like all the things you can't trust Keir Starmer about. What an extraordinary man he is. He speaks with forked tongue, I think you'll find. Plus, apparently, within 10 years, because we've got so much immigration in this country, we're going to run out of drinking water. Brilliant. Fantastic. What are we going to do? Let them eat cake, said Marie Antoinette. Let them drink beer. I don't know. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Denise says, fly tipping. This country is now just one big tip. A cesspit, indeed. Morning, Mike, says Tanya in London. I worked on the flab jabs in a medical PR capacity and decided to quit due to my morals, as I don't trust them. My brother has started taking Manjaro against my recommendation. He has lost 20 kilograms since January. He looks gaunt, sad and barely eats. It is heartbreaking. 20 kilos is an awful lot, isn't it? That's extraordinary. But well done to him for losing that weight. But you've got to do it in a way which does not destroy the rest of your life. I think that's the point about all of it. Here's Kevin Hollenbeck, Shadow Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. Kevin, very good morning to you.
Morning to you, Mike.
Good to see you. We're hearing this morning that Rachel Reeves's financial problem is worse than anybody ever thought. That it may well be that she's created, never mind a so-called £22 billion black hole, but now a £35 billion black hole, which is not going to be very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rachel Reeves, the architect of her own downfall, which I think is what you allude to, Mike.
Yes.
I mean, you know, they came in on the back of wanting more economic growth, and yet sort of spent the first 6 months talking the economy down, then whacking it with a huge amount of tax and spend, £76 billion a year of tax and spend, which will mean businesses have less to invest, which is clearly where you get growth from. And now you've got all this red tape coming down the track in the Employment Rights Bill. So this growth that Rachel Reeves is searching for in terms of what they're going to do about it is pretty much illusory. And now we're going to see more of the same. That's the worry. All this stuff, this increased benefits levels, the scrapping the 2-child limit that they're going to do now is another $4 billion a year. So it means taxes are going to go up again, which is going to slow growth even further. That's the reality of this situation. It's a completely inept set of economic policies that are going to make life much worse for the people of the United Kingdom.
Well, everything that they said was going to collect a load of money for them doesn't seem to have worked, does it? You know, even the pensioners of winter fuel allowance, which they're now sort of U-turning on, they're going to be not saving the billions of pounds that they said they were going to save, because it was only going to be about one anyway. Now it's going to be less than that. Same goes for the VAT on private schools. Instead, they've inherited, 13,000 new pupils in the state school system who would have otherwise been quite happily ensconced in the private system, which is costing a lot more money to the state system. It looks as though the abolition of the 2-child benefit cap could cost something like 10 billion. And everywhere you look, there's basically more bills coming in and no revenue coming in. So are they going to have to put taxes up? And if so, what taxes?
Yes, they are going to put taxes up. There's no doubt about it. You can't increase spending. Rachel Reeves fixed the fiscal rules so she could borrow more and spend more. She can't do that again without losing credibility. So therefore, if you're going to increase the size of the benefits bill, winter fuel allowance, I agree with. They never should have done that in the first place. So they should reverse that. But the 2-child limit on certain certain benefits is going to lift that $3.5 to $4 billion a year, and that won't be the end of it. You've got lots of departments, including the one I shadow, is pushing for more spending on things like affordable homes, which I can understand the need for that. But all this is going to cost money. So taxes are going to go up in the autumn. I think that's likely to be areas like capital gains tax, I would say, which will then deter investment. Because the thing about capital gains tax, like other taxes, it's discretionary. If you don't sell anything, then you won't pay any capital gain on it. It'll mean those kind of receipts drop. So this is a totally self-defeating economic philosophy. And I've got to say, all the other parties too, including Reform, their economics just don't add up. You've got tens of billions. I think Reform's spending pledges now are something like £145 billion a year, with no sensible means of offsetting that through reduced spending. So
Nigel Farage yesterday said, when he was asked that question, where's it all coming from? Is it just a magic money tree? He said, well, you get 80 billion, first of all, straight away from net zero. He did explain where that money would come from. You can disagree with him. You can disagree with him, but it doesn't mean that it's any less likely to be true than any other political economic promise that's been made to me ever since I've been alive.
I don't think that's true, Mike. I mean, I think, listen, the numbers are clearly difficult to predict, but doesn't mean you shouldn't make a good attempt to predict them. And Nigel Farage isn't making any prediction at all. He said the other day that, one of the journalists present at his press conference said, well, your numbers don't add up. He says, well, no numbers ever add up. That's irresponsible.
Well, that's not quite what he said. No, I watched what he said. He said these are where the numbers would come from. And then he said, obviously, you can't be absolutely accurate about it, which has been being honest with the public.
Well, okay.
I mean, let's put it this way. The government is in power right now, making a complete hash of the exchequer. Rachel Reeves doesn't know what she's doing, but you're the second Conservative MP that's come on today or in the last 2 days to my programme and started attacking reform. Shouldn't you be attacking the government?
Well, I'm attacking any party that doesn't believe in sound economics.
Well, why are you attacking a party that's not in power? Why are you not attacking the party that's in power?
Because we're all competing for the same thing, of course, which is the right to run this country, which is a huge privilege. And my caution to the people who might potentially vote for any other party is look at their economics. Does it add up? Now, let's look at the claim you just referred to then, Mike. £80 billion by cancelling net zero.
Yeah.
Well, it said in our manifesto it was 30 billion a year. And I don't know where that number comes from, because the net zero is currently paid for not by the taxpayer, it's paid for by the bill payer. So if you scratch all that, which is a perfectly, if you can make a logical argument around that, I get that completely. And we've got concerns about the pace of the transition to net zero, but that's not a saving to taxpayers as I can see it. So it'd be a good idea for you and others in the media, I know you will, Mike, is to interrogate those numbers.
I do interrogate
them.
I'm interrogating them now. And you're wrong to say that net zero cost is all borne by the taxpayer through bill paying, because it isn't. Because if that was true, why has GB Energy just handed £600 million to Scottish Power for a wind farm project, which was meant to be actually invested in by private investment, which it turns out is being given by the National Wealth Fund, which is actually taxpayers' money taken from elsewhere?
Well, you're mixing two things up then, mate. Well, let me explain. You're mixing capital investment up with recurrent spending.
No, I'm not. That's all part of the net zero profit. The whole of the net zero project is not just managed by money that comes from my electricity bill. It's managed by the amount of money given by government, which you did as well when you were in power, to private companies to explore net zero projects. And when we give money to net zero projects abroad, that doesn't come from our electricity bills either.
There's two different things here, Mike. One's capital project. If you look at the manifesto pledges of reform, it talks about £30 billion of recurrent in-year spending. That's what we're talking about. Capital spending like that £600 million you refer to.
It's all going into net zero projects, though. It's still net zero.
But it's not a saving you can make for the taxpayer in a year. That's the point.
Well, it's the saving that you can make from the taxpayers.
But that's not how it's been accounted for in Reform's manifesto. That's the point.
Well, you can attack reform as much as you want. It doesn't really matter. Reform are beating you.
Point, Mike.
Well, no, the reform are beating you in the polls, but they're not in government. So why are you not attacking the government spend instead of reform? You seem to have shifted your kind of focus. You want to attack reform because you're frightened of them. I get that.
Not at all. I'm not frightened of anybody.
Well, why do you keep attacking reform?
I don't keep attacking reform.
I had Helen Whately on here yesterday. She did exactly the same thing. I get you on here to attack the government. It's up to you if you want to spend that time attacking reform, but it's not going to win you any friends, because people see through it. They go, why are you having a go at reform?
Because I'm attacking. Because it's very clear, very important that people understand that sound money needs to be something that is properly worked through, and it's very easy to make pledges whether you're the Labour government, whether you're the Lib Dems, and also the Lib Dems, they've got fancy
but I don't
economics
care about
there.
what pledges them. There's not going to be an election for another 4 years. Why are you not attacking the government? I don't understand.
I'm very happy to attack the government, mate.
Well, why don't
very
you do that? Because you're going to run out of time in a minute, and then you won't have made any points against Rachel Reeves. Keir Starmer is about to make a speech in which he's going to address tax cuts, which he says he's going to make, or tax rises. He's going to address benefit cuts, which he also says he's going to make. Why do you want to talk about that?
Well, I already mentioned that. I already talked about the fact that there's £70 billion of tax to spend and that taxes will go up this autumn in the autumn budget as a result of that. There's no doubt about it. I also said that it's probably going to be capital gains tax, which is ultimately self-defeating. Everything the Labour has done since they came into office has been detrimental to growth in the economy. That's a reality.
Yes.
And I
so
totally
wouldn't this
agree
be an
with you.
opportunity? Wouldn't this be a better opportunity for you to say what you would do if you were still in government?
Well, we balance the books critically. Well, we'll set that out in due course, of course.
So you haven't got an answer for what you would do, but you're just attacking everybody else.
No, you asked me a minute ago, Mike, to attack the government. I responded to that by saying, OK, Mike, let's have a talk about that. Now you're attacking me for doing that.
Well, no, I'm not attacking you. No, because you don't have an... When I said, well, what would you do? You said, we'll set it out in due course. That means you don't have a plan.
No, that's not true, Mike. I mean, listen... You know, I like everybody else wants to see some meat on the bone in terms of Conservative policies. I have some fantastic policies I want to bring forward on things like home ownership, on levelling up, on integration in our communities, all those things. Those things will come in due course. But what the approach Kemi's asked us to take, which I absolutely agree with, is to make sure we do the hard work of making sure those policies are deliverable and the numbers add up. That's the right thing to do, rather than rush out policies for headlines. But over the next few months, you'll see policies, and there'll be the proper Conservative policies very similar to the policies you've seen on the deportation bill, which are clear policies on deporting every foreign national offender, on the fact that people can't get indefinite leave to remain for 15 years and apply for citizenship until that, disapplying human rights laws and the European Convention on Human Rights from immigration cases. These are policies we've already announced, and will be more like that coming down the track, that are proper Conservative policies, but crucially will be deliverable and will make economic sense, and the numbers will add up.
But the problem is, whenever we get anybody on, Kevin, from the Conservative Party, we always get the same reaction. You guys had 14 years to do all of the things that you now say you want to do. And so it's a very hard road for you to convince anybody that anything you say should be taken seriously. And that's not what I say. That's what people who listen to this show say.
Yeah, I get that, but I mean, I could point to the facts. 4 million more jobs in our economy, 1.2 million fewer people unemployed, record numbers of house building under our watch. That was the 50-year record of house building. Our schools, 90% of them are good or outstanding. It was 68% when we took over. Some of the best reading and maths scores amongst our young people. Street crime down 50%. All those things were successes. What you're probably pointing to...
But the country's in a hell of a state, right?
Yeah,
and I'm blaming Labour for some of that, and quite a lot of it, I would say. I'm not a fan of Keir Starmer, as you know. But it would not be right for me to let you get away with saying of all the great things that you did without pointing out that people didn't buy it. At the end of the day, the last election, you were slaughtered. And, and in the current polls, you're running fourth.
Yeah,
so, you're in a pretty bad place here.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I was going to go on to say the mistakes that we made certainly was we're promising people we'd control migration before we could, so 2020. And then when we moved to the new points-based system, which we implemented, those rules are far too liberal and led to much too higher numbers of people coming to this country. That was a mistake. I understand why. That's one of the reasons people have lost trust in us. Now, that was not a failure of intention. It was a failure of execution. We got that wrong. It was a mistake. What we need to do now is bring forward policies that do restore confidence and trust, crucially, between ourselves and the British electorate. That's what we plan to do. We can only do that by taking a little bit of time in formulating those policies so they're properly worked through and will then mean, as well as a success of intention, we get that success of execution.
OK. Well, you're not going to win any friends by attacking other people who are not in power, is all I would say. Just a word of advice, Kevin. Thank you very much indeed. I'll tell you what, if you haven't seen it, here's how Reform UK say they're going to pay for their tax policies.
You were certainly right about one thing in your speech. We do want to know how you're going to pay for the policies that you've announced today. You've mentioned a couple of pretty big measures that will bring in savings, but even those won't quite cover the cost of your already announced tax plans, like the 20,000 threshold. So what I'm wondering is, are you going to tell us today how you're going to pay for winter fuel allowance, for scrapping the two-child benefit cap, and for the new married couples allowance? Are you going to tell us how you paid for these measures that you've announced today, or have you got a magic money tree growing in your back garden?
All right, you started it. The cost of net zero to the taxpayer, figures produced by the Institute of Government, are estimated between 2025 and 2030 to cost £45 billion every single year. The cost of asylum seeker accommodation, be it hotels or be it houses of multiple occupancy, as I mentioned earlier, £4 billion every year. That may be a slightly low estimate because actually the overall costs of illegal immigration are much higher. DEI, as researched by defunding political campaigns, estimated to cost government £7 billion every year. Quangos, just a 5% cut. And by the way, do you remember in the general election, we suggested a 5% cut? I mean, you thought, you know, what dreadful people we were. Impossible, it can't be done. And yet the government now proposing a 5% cut. Well, we're proposing a 5% cut to Quango funding, which would over a 5-year term be £65 billion. If you add all that up, you've got a pretty eye-watering number of £350 billion. And whilst that may be, I accept, you know, slightly optimistic, because it's difficult always to cut everything, I think you can see very clearly the direction that we're going in.
So there's Nigel Farage's explanation as to where the money will come from. Let's get a voice note quickly from Paul on policing.
Good morning, Mike. Paul in Hartlepool. Harry Miller was so correct earlier on when he talked about the wrong type of person having been promoted within the police and also having been brought into the police over the last few years. Many of the senior officers in the command teams are fast-track officers with Mickey Mouse degrees that simply have never worked the streets, nor do they have any understanding of how to work the streets. I also believe that like promotes and like brings in like. And many of the officers we're now seeing, they're far too small in stature, and they're not simply able to deal with public order or violent situations. I saw 2 police officers the other day get out of a car. They both looked as though they'd been to Greggs, and not to take a crime report, but to eat all the pies. We're simply employing the wrong type of person in the police now, and those in command are the wrong type of people too. I'm afraid the police service has become a busted flush in this country. Thanks, Mike. Good morning.
Morning, Paul. Thanks very much indeed. I think many people would have said that their experience is exactly the same. Let's talk to Marco Longhi, who's a former Conservative MP and who's now a Reform UK campaigner. Marco, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Good to talk to you. I don't know if you were able to see and listen to what Kevin Hollinrake had to say there. I just thought I might as well stop him in midstream before he started boring the entire nation, because, you know, the Tories don't get it. You decided, for whatever reason that you wanted to do so, to leave the Tories behind and join Reform. The Tories seem, because it's the second day in a row I've had a Tory MP on, and they've tried to spend more time attacking Reform than they actually do attacking the government, which seems to me to be a bizarre strategy.
It is a bizarre strategy. Indeed, even some of those institutions who you would describe as being very much left of centre, such as the Cambridge Student Union, where I was invited together with Anne Widdecombe to speak at a debate, which was, are Reform now the real opposition? Yeah. The answer to that question is absolutely yes. You don't count an official opposition based on the number of MPs in Parliament. You count them. You assess that based on whether you are actually winning the arguments out there, whether the press are reflecting how much coverage they are giving you. And it is absolutely quite clear that everybody is talking about Reform, what Reform is saying, what Nigel is saying, and he is clearly a Prime Minister in waiting.
Yeah. I mean, as far as Kevin Hollinrake and his criticisms go, I suppose. I mean, I think Nigel's answer to that press conference question there pretty much answers it. But I mean, if you were asked the question by Kevin Hollinrake that none of the Reform financial policies add up, what would you say to him?
Well, of course, you did hear Nigel's response to that. And actually, Nigel was quite conservative with some of the estimates around the cost of illegal immigration. I've seen estimates much closer to the £7 million per day for accommodation. And it is absolutely clear that to the wider services is costing the taxpayer an awful lot more than that, which of course was a point that Nigel made. But, you know, I like Kevin. I think he means well, but he's clearly being very loyal to a party that is only interested in itself rather than actually winning the arguments and doing the best for the country. And that is one of the main reasons why I left. I just woke up one day and thought, you know what, the scale of the betrayal is so huge. I just cannot look Dudley people in the eye anymore and say, if I am to ever represent you again, I just can't ever use a platform that says, we promise to reduce immigration, because it's happened over 4 consecutive general elections and no more vividly than at the last one.
Yes, I think so. And a lot of my listeners and viewers feel the same way. You know, most Reform voters in that last election that got you the 5 MPs and now an extra one, thanks to Sarah Poaching getting the by-election in Runcorn, is most of them, I mean, some of them are ex-Labour voters, but many of them are ex-Conservative voters who say we can never vote Conservative again, because we feel very let down by what we were promised, by the fact that Brexit wasn't done properly, by the fact that immigration was out of control, and by the fact that taxes were so high. All of the things that, you know, and crime as well, all of the things that the Conservative Party traditionally is supposed to be standing for.
Quite correct. And if I were to be on the same interview as Kevin at the same time, I would ask him a question now. The question would be, name just 3 things that the last Conservative government did that you would describe as being truly Conservative. Can you think of one, Mike?
No, not one.
Exactly. So when it comes to law and order, look at the shambles that it turned out to be under the Conservative government. I'm embarrassed. I was a Conservative in that government.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a paper on policing and what it should look like in the future. Look at taxation. I absolutely pleaded with the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, to increase the VAT threshold from the measly 85,000 that it is today, that's been there for the last 20 years, to say 250,000. What would that do? That would encourage investment in small and medium enterprises. It would discourage people doing cash jobs. It would actually invest in people, companies that want to grow. They're more likely to take people on. Guess what he did? Just to pacify people like me. He took it from 85,000 to 90,000. Yeah. I mean, what a thing to do. You might as well have just left it alone. That was just political economics that has made zero impact on business and just wanted to keep people like me who've been pressurizing the government to be much more entrepreneurial and supporting business quiet. And that was the nature of the Sunak government, I'm afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. And he made that promise to stop the boats, which he might as well not have made. And then after he left office, he said, I probably should never have said it. And that doesn't encourage people to believe in politicians, does it? But you know, you can't go on like that.
That actually basically says that there was never really any intention. And that's why I thought it was a little disingenuous of Kevin to actually say that it was a failure operationally rather than a failure of intention.
Yeah.
It's quite clear in my mind that there was never, ever any intention. And then history has repeated itself, hasn't it? Because it's a Conservative government that talks tough, but then never delivers in government. And whoever they install as leader again, because I'm sorry to say, Kemi's not cutting the mustard, is she? Whoever comes after Kemi, they still have to deal with a huge structural problem. And that problem is that 100 out of 120 MPs that are there now, that are probably there as a result of David Cameron and wanting to shift the Conservative Party to the left, they are actually more centre-left MPs who are probably, better at home under a Liberal Democrat Party rather than a true Conservative Party. And how is any leader going to deal with that? They're not going to pass any legislation, all this tough talking about the ECHR. I begged and pleaded for years while in government to do it. They wouldn't do it. They just wouldn't do it. They talked about doing it, but then they wouldn't do it. Why? Because there would be rebellions in Parliament and they wouldn't be able to deliver on it. And so this is the position now the Conservative Party is in, together with its own command and control centre, which is absolutely full of people who are very much left of centre, who believe in net zero, who believe in DEI, who believe in all of these things. And all of this talking tough just isn't cutting it, and they're being found out by the electorate.
And do you think, as Dominic Cummings said this week in an interview, that they're finished, the Conservatives?
Yes, I believe they are finished. I mean, will they perhaps come back one day? Well, who knows? I'm one of these people who will say never, but the Conservative Party needs to be wiped out and start from afresh if it is to grow again, because it simply can't change what it has now become, and that's been proven time and time again. And there are some former Conservative MPs and maybe one or two still sitting in the chamber who I know are proper right of centre politicians, and I feel very sorry for them. And I would say to them, please consider your position. Please look at, people who go to Parliament are elected representatives, and I've made always a meal of this when I've been an MP. You have to represent the people that elect you. Can they honestly say that they are truly representative of the people when time and time again they have actually said they would represent but then did not? It's shameful, and I just couldn't live that lie any further.
Marco, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Marco Longi, former Conservative MP and now Reform UK campaigner. If you want to get a flavour of what the audience thinks of Kevin Hollingrake, have a listen to this from Pete.
Hiya, Mike. Pete from Lancashire. Just listening to your guest there, mate. There's just no meat on the bones, mate, is there? And Kimmy Badenoch's not got it. All that Keir Starmer says is, look what you've done over the past so many years, so, blah, blah, blah. That's all he says, because they have no answer, they have no fight. That's why I voted Reform. Unfortunately, this bunch of clowns got in because we voted Reform.
Yeah, there's some truth to that, Pete, but I think the problem for Kevin Hollingrake and his ilk is that they don't get it. They don't understand that people are not really listening to what they've got to say. And to come out and say you're going to attack everybody else, but we haven't got a plan, we're going to lay out our plan in due course. Well, that's not good enough, is it? 9:32.
I do not condone drug taking or encourage it in any way, shape or form. In fact, most drug takers that I've come across are the most tiresome and boring people imaginable. But this proposal is doing partly the right thing for exactly the wrong reason. What we need to do, and I'm sure you're going to disagree with me, is we need to legalise and regulate every single illegal drug.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:34. I'm Mike Graham. Understanding what's going on in this country and what's going on in this world is not easy, but we try and navigate for you. Morning Glory podcast coming out shortly thereafter this show ends, every single weekday morning from 6 till 10. You can get your hands on the podcast as soon as you like. Good morning, Mike, says Debs. This water issue is bonkers. My dad lives in Oakhampton and he told me that a reservoir on Dartmoor was turned down because it may damage the countryside. I'm pretty sure that it would enhance it and enhance the wildlife, wouldn't it? Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk to Baroness Kate Hoey, independent peer, former Labour MP, of course. I'm pretty sure that she might not be in favour of some things that this government are actually doing, as she was not in favour of some of the things that the last government did either. Kate, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. I hope you can see me. I'm on an island off the coast of Northern Ireland, and it's a bit windy, so I can't do it outside.
That's fine. Well, I hope you're having a lovely time. It's a lovely part of the world. Beautiful place. Apparently, you might want to store some water up while you're there, because apparently we're going to run out of it in about 10 years, even though we are, in fact, surrounded by water. But let's talk a little bit about not Keir Starmer, about Keir Starmer's sort of thorn in his side, Sadiq Khan, who was described to me yesterday as the Gary Lineker of the Labour Party, because he just keeps coming out with stuff that people would rather wish that he didn't. He wants to now decriminalise cannabis. I don't think that's a good idea, do you?
I certainly don't think it's a good idea. And of course, we've seen what happened when the head of the Lambeth Police way back in 2001 took the decision to go soft on cannabis for 6 months, an experiment, which ended up with lots and lots of young people seeing that cannabis was freely available by the drug dealers in the area, just starting out on something that was going to probably, if they kept going, destroy their lives. And I'm just amazed that Sadiq Khan, you'd have thought, there's so much knife crime in London, and so many things, so much crime is actually as a result of many people who have become addicted to a very strong type of cannabis skunk, which then puts them into a situation where they, act in a peculiar way, perhaps. And I'm very, very disappointed that he would even think of it. But I don't think the government hopefully will have, surely even Keir Starmer will realise that this is just not sensible. Yeah, well, even Angela Rayner actually has come out and said that she wouldn't decriminalise it. Oh, you've lost me. So she actually was quite strong about that, and she said that she was making jokes about the drugs that she's taken, which were all, of course, relatively legal drugs, but she said no, there's no chance of the government doing it, because what we've seen in America, for example, Kate, is that where they've decriminalised and made it legal to smoke marijuana, other drugs have appeared because the drug dealers decided they wanted to make money some other way. Well, the drug dealers use then young children, offering them cannabis as a way then of getting them into a kind of situation where they're either helping them to pass those drugs on or to get involved in stronger drugs. And, there's a bit of hypocrisy around here, because I bet Sadiq Khan is supporting this ridiculous generational ban of tobacco that's going through Parliament at the moment, which is just a nonsense, where you're going to have poor little retailers sitting in their shop trying to decide whether a man is 48 or 49 or whatever the age is when the generational thing comes through. So I just do not understand, because I think most people would say now that if cigarettes hadn't been invented, tobacco hadn't been there, that they wouldn't have made cigarette smoking legal. So why, although I'm personally in favour of people making their own decisions, but I don't want to see smoking in public places, that kind of thing. But the reality is this is just another of, I think, Sadiq Khan's idea to keep in the news, to keep the headlines, so that he can make a comeback at some stage and perhaps challenge Sir Keir for the leadership of the Labour Party. Yeah, I don't think that's not to be considered, but he's also couched it in his usual kind of race baiting way, where he's basically said, this would ease the community tensions between the police and ethnic minorities. As if to say, there's nobody white who smokes marijuana in London, because there's plenty of people who are of all colours and creeds who smoke these drugs. Yes, and it is. I have to say that people who want to legalise cannabis and marijuana and make it more available are usually people, quite a lot of what I would call white, upper middle class establishment people who've sort of seen it and done it at university and don't really realise, or perhaps they don't want to realise, just how it has changed some of the strength of the cannabis that's around these days. Right. And I think it's a very, very risky indeed, and I just don't think any government would want to do it at all. So, since we've got you, Kate, and I haven't spoken to you for a while about anything really in general, what are you making of the way that this Labour government is making it pretty much a hash of everything they're doing?
Well, I think they think now that if they kind of go back on some of the most unpopular things, like the winter fuel payments and perhaps even the family farm tax issue, inheritance tax, that this will suddenly make them go up in the polls again. But I think they've lost it. I think it's far too late now for these kind of knee-jerk half turns, especially when we know that they don't really believe it. They're only doing it because they think that it'll help them in the polls. And I think we're going to see reform continue to rise up. Of course, what Nigel needs to do now, Nigel Farage, and the reform needs to really look in detail at what they're going to be doing and how they're going to do it if they're in government. They can't just keep going on with sound bites. And I think that's beginning to change. We are seeing some more flesh on the bone, as they would say, from reform. But the council elections were shocking, really, for Labour. And there must be an awful lot of Labour MPs in the red wall areas who are beginning to feel, my goodness, we're certainly not going to be here in 3 years' time.
No, I think that's right. And I mean, much conversation in the last hour because of what Kevin Hollingbrake said, that the Tories have kind of lost the plot and that they're not really relevant anymore. Dominic Cummings this week said he thinks they might be finished. I mean, you've been I don't want to use the word veteran, but I'm going to, and I mean it in a good way, been a veteran of this political scene of ours for a long time. I mean, can you see reform becoming the main opposition if they're not already, and then becoming a government?
Yes, I can. I mean, perhaps a year ago I wouldn't have said that, but I have been disappointed a little in Kemi Badenoch. I thought that they would come out really fighting. I mean, it is difficult in the Commons because the Labour majority is so huge. But I think we haven't seen that spark of really attacking. And of course, for a while, the first year is always difficult because everything that they say, Labour can come back and say, you didn't do that while you were in government. And of course, that's the real problem, that the Conservatives weren't a Conservative government. And that's why they lost so badly, because they had gone back on so many things and become a kind of wishy-washy, slightly more right-wing, Labour Party.
Yeah. Exactly right. I think it's a fascinating time, actually, I have to say. And I'm very disappointed in just the Conservatives in general, really. But, Kate, listen, great to talk to you. We must get you on longer and try and get you in the studio when you're back in town. Baroness Kate Hoey there, independent peer and former Labour MP, of course. Let's get a voice note from Sharon on Kevin Hollingbrake.
The chap you just had on now that's saying that, it's all reform. Are they running scared, Mike? And some of his numbers that he's poking out there to do with net zero, we all know that we're paying for net zero. It's all gone down the pan since net zero came to pass. So get rid of net zero, we might just add money for the things that we really need in this country.
I think that would be a very, very good place to start. Simon says, Kevin Hollingbrake has just shown us why the Tories are finished. What a joke. Another one from Steve. MG, Hollingbrake, an example of why no one is voting for the Tories or Labour. True that. Let's come up with some plans for getting the water into this country, because even though we're surrounded by it, apparently it's running out because we've got too many people here. Who knew? It's 9:43.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:44. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through for the next 10 or 12 minutes or so. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be along for the next 3 hours after that. Lenny in Shropshire says, at 16, my daughter was diagnosed with MS. The weight piled on because of a lack of mobility. She's now 35, started Manjaro last Christmas, completely changed her diet. She's healthier and balanced, lost 7 stone. She's never looked better. She's mobile and she's happy. It does help some people. I'm sure it does help some people. I wouldn't suggest that it doesn't. I just don't know that we know the long-term effects of it. and I think an awful lot of people will take it without really any great idea of what it's going to do to their well-being. Lee from Bristol says, Mike, I do a lot of house clearances, and to use a commercial tip is expensive. One sofa is 150 quid, one mattress 110, one fridge 100, etc. It's no excuse to flight it, but with these prices, the councils only have themselves to blame. That's an interesting point. We'll take more of that probably tomorrow, because we may run out of time today to talk about all of it. Let's talk now to Erica Popperwell, head of campaigns at River Action. That's a campaign group against destructive industrial practices to try and end the pollution of our rivers and waterways. Well, apparently, not only do we have a problem with our rivers and waterways thanks to the useless water companies that run everything literally into the ground and lose most of our water into the ground, by the way, as well. We're going to run out of water in about 10 years, according to the government. Steve Reed, the Environment Secretary, says there's simply too many people here. We need to build more reservoirs, but I'm not sure that they're actually going to. Erica, very good morning to you. Good morning, Erica.
Good morning.
Hi. I'm not quite sure what Labour is saying here. Are they saying they're going to build...
Hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Are they saying they're going to build more reservoirs, or are they saying that they're going to take over some of the reservoirs at the moment which aren't being used very well? I'm not quite certain.
From my understanding, they're giving, they're allowing the new reservoirs to be built that we're looking for by the water companies.
Right. So the idea is that we get more reservoirs for more to help the water supply. But where will those reservoirs be, and will people object to them being built?
Yeah, there's one planned in Lincolnshire and one planned in Cambridgeshire, and of course there's likely to be some local reticence towards it, but the government is now saying that it's a significant national infrastructure project, which changes the planning around it to accelerate the plans to be built. And it's absolutely something we need to see. Since privatisation 30 years ago, we haven't seen any new reservoirs being built, while the population has grown and our need for water has grown. So that's why we're now at this unsustainable point, because of a chronic lack of investment by water companies.
Yeah. Was it not also that they were told in some way that environmentally friendly water was not best stored in reservoirs? Because my understanding is that there were environmental reasons why reservoirs weren't being built.
I think there's lots of different potential objections, but we do need reservoirs built because we do need more capacity in the system. And the groundwater is one source of water, but it depends on the geology, actually, and where you are in the country. That's not always going to be possible. So we do need more reservoirs.
Right. So this is a good thing then. Why only 2 in that case? Why not build 10?
I guess that's the question for the water companies. Why are they not putting more money into investing in their infrastructure and less money into their shareholder returns and corporate bonuses?
Yeah. But, I mean, are they going to be paying for it, or are we going to be paying for it, I suppose, is the question.
Well, I guess as bill payers, to which we all are for this non-discretionary essential public service, we will all be paying in a way, but it will be the investment should be done by the companies. But I would question what proportion of the bills that we pay are put into
Right.
different sources, either
Right.
shareholder returns or investment in infrastructure.
Sure. I mean, they are completely useless, these water companies. I mean, I don't know what the answer is, really. I mean, I know that in Scotland they do run it better, don't they? Because they have a sort of a system whereby we pay for, or when I lived up there anyway, you paid for it through council tax. So there is a model that could be used which would be better, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of different models for water companies that we've seen in Europe at more regional levels, or we've seen there can be public ownership. In terms of Thames Water, who is the worst offending water company to our mind, it was them that was given a £122.7 million fine yesterday. Yeah. We are seeking that they are put into special administration, which we've seen previously with failed energy companies. It would be bringing it back into a level of government control and taking away the profit over pollution emphasis that we see at the moment. The water companies are prioritising their returns rather than investing in what they should do.
Right. Well, there doesn't seem to be anything they get right, because, you know, in addition to the pollution problem, we've got the financial problem, then we've got the leakage problem, which has been going on for as long as I can remember. You know, I remember them fixing the pipes in 2010 in London, digging up half the city, saying that we're sort of, replenishing, some modernisation projects, because many of the pipes in London are all Victorian and they leak loads of water into the ground. They're still digging up London, and they were doing that for the Olympics in 2012. You know, that was 13 years ago, and they're still carrying on the same project, and the water's still leaking into the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a chronic lack of investment over 30 years, and you can't fix that in just a few years. And it is the Victorian infrastructure, but we've known it's a Victorian infrastructure since Victorian times. So why is it only now that it's like we're also seeing the impacts of climate change, which is bringing around more severe and extreme weather, which is putting more pressure on the system. So, but again, climate change is not a new story. So why is it taking now to make the steps that we need to see? It's very disappointing. It's been a catalogue of poor management for so long that we're now in this perilous state with Britain's biggest, in fact, Europe's biggest water company on the edge of going bust, and people still needing clean and safe water.
Yeah. Absolutely right. Well, listen, hopefully something will change, and with the reservoirs being built, maybe we'll be in a bit better place. Erica, thank you very much indeed. Erica Popplewell, Head of Campaigns at River Action there. Let's get another voice note on Kevin Hollingworth. This time it's Mark.
Love your show, love your work. This is Mark from Kidderminster. Yes, total agreement. I did leave a message yesterday about these Conservative MPs. All they seem to be doing is attacking reform, and it's just sitting there watching this Kevin Hollingworth again attack reform, and you called him out. Well done. But it's clear that these guys are career politicians. They're not interested in the will of the people. They're interested in their own pockets, their own careers, and they realise that reform is actually going to be replacement of Conservatives. So the Conservatives want to be in the two-tier race, if you like, with the Labour Party, so they can keep their cushy jobs, keep their benefits, keep their crooked ways about them, and not give them monkeys about the people. Fair play for calling them out. Have a great day. Love your work.
Mark, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, Kevin Hollingworth getting a bit of a shellacking, has to be said, for some of the things he came out with. On the subject of fly tipping, we had a story today saying that fly tipping is now becoming something like the county gangs problem, where you've got basically loads and loads of people, county lines rather, loads and loads of people in criminal gangs coming around and telling you they're going to pick your stuff up and go and dump it somewhere, but they're dumping it just anywhere they want. Steve in Cambridge says, last week I phoned my local council to say I had a fridge and a sofa to get rid of. I explained that I am disabled. Their reply was, put the goods outside of your garden on the roadside, sofa £40, fridge £45. This is why people dump. Yeah, I'm sure that's right. And on fly tipping, it says, Julie, in other countries, the council takes away large items. In Greece, just put your fridge by the bins every day. In Spain, put your mattress out on a Wednesday and they will take it. They don't charge extra. Why can't our councils help people rather than expecting them to take things to the tip or pay extra for the council to take them away? A lot of items the council take can be recycled, refurbished or fixed. Maybe if the councils collected the mattresses, fridges, etc., there would be less fly tipping. I think a lot of people are coming to that same conclusion, that really it's the councils that are messing everything up, and it's the councils that are making all of the problems appear rather than to disappear. And it is an extraordinary state of affairs. On the subject of doctors, one from Gurdeep, he says, these junior doctors are clearly young and not as experienced as older doctors. It seems like this generation is more concerned with what they can get than with their duty to the profession. Frankly, their attitude comes across as entitled and increasingly greedy. Well, this is the point, and that's exactly what they said on the front page of the Times this morning. You know, and I could have said it last month and last year, because I did. You know, people haven't got any sympathy any longer for well-paid doctors who are complaining about the job that they do being too difficult and not being rewarding enough. Nobody's buying it anymore. Thanks very much indeed. This is Talk.
I do not condone drug taking or encourage it in any way, shape or form. In fact, most drug takers that I've come across are the most tiresome and boring people imaginable. But this proposal is doing partly the right thing for exactly the wrong reason. What we need to do, and I'm sure you're going to disagree with me, is we need to legalise and regulate every single illegal drug.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's nearly 10 o'clock. Goodness me, I don't know where the show went this morning. We've got a few more minutes though. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here very shortly. First is a voice note from Leslie on reform.
Hi Mike, just a quick one. Nigel won't have to pay for anything because he's being very clever. He's driving the government into making all the cost-effective changes before he even gets there. Good shout, I think. Thanks, Mike.
No problem at all, Leslie. Thanks very much indeed. Let's talk to Neil, who's in Buckinghamshire, wants to talk about water. Neil, very good morning.
Morning, Mike. About the sewage going into the rivers, etc.
Yes.
One thing that people are missing, and they don't realise, I work for a water company. Now, I won't stand up for them, but this one I will do.
Okay.
Rivers haven't been dredged for years and years and years.
Yeah, that's true.
An EU directive. Now, think about it. You've got a tank that gets half of it full of silt.
Yeah.
Right? Then you fill it up, it leaks.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't dredge the rivers, the rainwater's got nowhere to go. It goes down the drains into the sewage works, which means it's treating rainwater as well as sewage.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the line, builders have got to start paying for upgrades of waterworks, and people have got to start dredging the rivers.
Right.
Stop the flooding in one as well.
Am I right in saying the dredging of rivers was stopped because it was considered to be environmentally unsound?
Yes, and also because it disturbs the wildlife.
That's what I mean. You know, they consider it to be a bad thing to do. My house got flooded, you know, three times in a week and living in Wiltshire because
that's okay, Mike.
Because there was
okay because you didn't kill a bird.
Yeah, because they had water voles in the culvert that went underneath the church, and the whole village, because they wouldn't dredge the little stream, was completely and utterly flooded. A council guy came around and he said, oh, I said, why can't you dredge it? He said, oh, there's water voles there. I said, if I shoot the water voles, can you dredge it then? He said, oh yeah, we could do that. He said, but I couldn't recommend you shooting them, obviously.
But
you know, that's how ridiculous it is.
That's why the water companies are polluting the river, because the works can't cope, because they're treating rainwater rather than sewage, because the rainwater goes down the drains on the runoff. That is the big problem. Start it at the beginning and you will solve the issue.
Yeah. I mean, it's not difficult, this stuff, is it? Neil, thank you very much. You should be running the water company, never mind just working for it, because you've obviously got more sense than anybody who works. How can you work for a water company and not know how to manage water? I mean, it's what you do. It's what you're supposed to be paid to do. God, blimey. Anyway, here we are. We're at the end of another show. Julie Hartley-Brewer is here. Very good morning.
Quickly.
I know. I know. I don't know where it's all gone
fun.
today. Having lots of fun. The Tories are losing the plot. They keep attacking reform as if, you know...
It's really interesting, that, isn't it? Well, and Labour keep attacking reform as well. We've got that Keir Starmer speech.
Apparently, yeah.
I mean, it's a bit sodding rich from both Labour and the Tories to attack reform for having fantasy politics. Have they heard of net zero?
Yeah.
Have they heard of all their uncosted plans in the last election?
Exactly right. And it's a bit like, you know...
They all do it. That's the trouble.
You can't be trusted that they're making uncosted promises. Really?
I mean,
really?
Everyone. That said, I've said this a million times. I keep saying it. We get the politicians we deserve. If people keep insisting on saying, I want this benefit, I want that, I want this resource, I want this infrastructure, but I don't want to pay any more taxes, I want someone over there to pay it, that's what happens.